This romantic story begins from the moment a young lady's elegant hand almost wrapped around the boy's neck, and her soft voice was heard behind him, looking directly into each other's eyes. The girl said she wanted the young gentleman to be hers, at least for once. But here, the young man looked ambiguous, and quickly at the lady, as if wanting to respond to her words, but was suppressing his emotions. He had no choice but to look into her deep gaze. And mysterious, the couple immediately found themselves locked in a tender kiss. But she thought he was the Duke's heir. And she a commoner, how could they be together, hugging each other as if for the last time? The Duke whispered softly that when he graduated, he would have to leave her. It seemed like something was preventing their relationship from becoming reality. Let's go back in time. That same Duke, cute with pink hair, started asking Leon if she was tired of him, because he didn't understand the reason why she rejected him. Her sweet face was already engulfed in tears in a moment. He told Leon he would do anything for her, as long as she didn't leave him alone. Leon was completely bewildered by the question asked. She would graduate soon and didn't know what to do because he wouldn't leave her. The students were talking among themselves and discussing a certain transfer student from the academy who had passed an extremely difficult exam to be able to transfer to them. Suddenly, they started scattering to the sides, and someone shouted, "Run!" A group of youths were discussing that the new academy student was very pretty, but so far there had been no rumors about which club she had chosen. The boy was very surprised that the rumors hadn't spread yet. Normally, everything spreads at the speed of lightning. But not this time. But suddenly, she didn't meet the application deadline. One of the boys wonders why the girl made a mistake, since she is very smart. Some people agree with him, but they are interrupted by the sudden strange sounds of someone falling. The uninvited guest begs forgiveness from the person who was chasing him, and also promises not to run here again. A group of youths stand dumbfounded with their mouths open, and their eyes wide with surprise. The victim, trembling with fear, lies on the floor trying to recover from the state of shock. Someone approaches that group of 3 scared people and asks if anyone knows the name of the transfer student. He, a tall boy with pale pink hair, looks at the people around him with a cold stare. And imperious. Arena Academy, named after its founder. It is the only educational institution in the Ragnaries Empire where social status does not matter. Whether you are an aristocrat or a commoner, you have the right to attend the academy only after passing the exam. The academy's graduates have become famous in various fields thanks to their talents. Special attention is paid here to club activities where students can express themselves. So everyone must join one of the existing clubs. And Lijun, who brilliantly passed the transfer exam and found herself the center of attention. She became the talk of everyone because, despite her background, she achieved excellent results. And her beauty made many students' hearts beat faster. She started looking for existing clubs. And the first one was the Mosquito Torture Club, which she didn't like. She also looked for a food tasting club. But no matter how much she explored all the options, nothing was to her liking. The girl considered choosing a club an incredibly difficult task. So she started banging her head against the wall. Unfortunately, she hasn't been able to make friends with anyone yet, because yesterday, the deadline for applications expired. Lee Young was very nervous because club activities greatly influenced her grades. So she couldn't help but join. After inflicting torture on herself by banging her head against the wall, she had a bruise on her forehead, which she didn't pay much attention to, because she was busy making the decision to leave it to fate. Tired after long discussions, the girl realized that she now needed fresh air. Students communicate comfortably with each other. They joke and tease each other. Meanwhile, Li Zhang is not far from them, watching their communication from the side. And lost in her thoughts, with sadness, she realized that many had known each other since elementary school. And she, who had been absent for 5 years, could not join the team. Her thoughts about whether she could find friends were interrupted by someone's voice. at the same time that the girl felt another person's touch. The brown-haired woman flinched, holding back a scream because she certainly didn't expect something like that. The stranger asked her if by chance she was Lillian, and asked her to confirm that he was not mistaken. The girl looks indignantly at the boy in front of her, wondering where this devil came from. She answers the man with a negative, which greatly surprises the stranger. He apologizes, but Lillian responds with a question, wondering why he is looking for a student with that name. The young man quickly flees, while loudly reporting that something has happened. The brown-haired woman considered the guy stupid because he didn't see her badge on which her name was written. Lillian, slowly turning around, thinks aloud what kind of person was looking for her. She didn't know anyone who might need her, which worried her, but she quickly forgot about it, because the clubs were more concerned with her. The girl came to the conclusion that, while going out for fresh air, she met a strange boy, but she never found the club. She wondered aloud what she should choose, while the unknown boy behind her, smiling, realized that he had found what he needed. Lillian hears someone's voice asking her to join someone's club. She hesitantly turns around and sees a very happy boy behind her. The brown-haired woman carefully examines every aspect of the young man, amazed by his beauty as he provides her with a special form, informing her that she can enter her name there. The girl, blinded by his silhouette, turns away confused so that his radiance doesn't completely deprive her of sight. The stranger invites her again to join his club and asks if she has chosen anything yet. She, distrustful of this whole situation, and of the strange guys who draw attention to her throughout the day, asks the boy if he knows that the deadline for applying to clubs has already expired. He, confused, looks at her surprised, clearly not expecting to hear something like that. A few seconds later, the young man comes to his senses and, smiling, warns her that the club meeting will take place tomorrow. Lee Ji-yeon reminds him again of the application deadline, but the person opposite only says that she still has time, because the deadline is today. The pink-haired man shows where to signal, but the girl turns away and pretends to be deaf while leaving. Feeling someone's touch, she stops, very surprised. The brown-haired woman turns around and sees him next to her, not understanding why he is leaving. The boy explains that the club will only be formed when she writes her name on the form, so the timing is not important to them. Lijun, surprised, thinks that this is where the whole conversation should have started. Despite everything that had happened before, she understood that maybe going straight in would be better than going randomly. The girl realized that the pink-haired man was a school celebrity, so she shouldn't expect peace. And knowing the seriousness of the matter, she rejected the young man's proposal. But the boy didn't give up. He asked her for help in forming a club, because they only needed one member. Lillian didn't know how to react to this, because she needed to refuse. But those pleading eyes looking at her needed the opposite. The young man didn't let go of his grip, and continued to look at her diligently with his puppy eyes. As a result, after a while, Lillian's painting appeared on the form, and the boy, beaming with happiness, thanked his savior with satisfaction. The girl, feeling embarrassed towards him, walked away, and the redhead shouted after her that she should come to the club tomorrow. He, to himself, thought about how difficult it was to open his own club. This pink-haired boy, whose name was Karshan, initially didn't think this would be a really difficult task. He was simply annoyed by the fans who followed him from club to club, so he decided to found his own. Among the students, the rumor that he wanted to open his own club spread widely, and all because they were talking about Karshan and Fjord, the top students of the academy, because participating with them in the same club could make their school years much easier. If it weren't for one thing, it's that Karshan didn't like all the candidates for the third member, that they really needed to open the club. The boys had to conduct a search, and soon one of them learned about a transfer student with excellent grades who hadn't joined anywhere, and, fortunately, managed to convince her using all his charm. So far, there hadn't been anyone who didn't show the slightest interest in Karsian. So when Lee Jones refused, he really panicked. The boy wondered if his recent interlocutor had vision problems. After all, as he himself says, he has a beautiful face, which made it impossible to refuse. Time passed, and the three of them were already sitting in the club. Listening to the pink-haired, one asked the girl about her vision. The brunette, without being confused, quickly replied that she had two, and a 0 in each eye. Only now, on the first day in the club, Lillian learned the name of the boy who invited her as the third participant. She also realized that he only seems kind. But in reality, his terrible character is legendary. One of the legends says that during sword training, he attacked a person with magic without hesitation. But despite only pretending to be kind, he doesn't seem like an aggressive person. To the girl, Carcian seemed more like a grump than a bad guy. The second participant, a blonde boy named Lilin, introduces himself to her as Fjord. He, emitting a certain light, asks if he can address the girl by her name. The brown-haired woman looks at him amazed that he is so handsome. She greets him and tells him that he is very handsome, without specifying that we are talking about his face. And finally, the girl decides to ask what his club does. In response, she receives words that the theme of the club is recreation. Carcian explains that she can do whatever she wants, and that they themselves will earn the club points. And Lillian's name also appears on the list. In conclusion, he says that the girl is only needed here for the head count, so she plays no role. Fjord observes for himself that this was said quite directly. The brunette is very surprised by the pink-haired one's words, as she expected to have at least some kind of job. She confidently rises from her seat and slowly begins to approach the young man, approaching him almost closely. The girl tells Carson that he really is the best. The redhead abruptly pushes the girl away, trying to create distance between them. He, completely red, shouts and asks why Lilan is bothering him. The brown-haired woman, not understanding what is happening, apologizes to the person in front of her, addressing him by his name. The young man blushes even more. Surprise and indignation are visible on his face. He turns around and insists that Lilan stop calling him by his name. The girl doesn't understand how to call the boy now. She wonders if he was really pretending that day. The brown-haired woman turns around and runs towards the exit without saying a word. Fjord, surprised by what is happening, asks the girl what is wrong. She turns around and says confidently that the pink-haired one allowed her to rest. Lilan points to 3 red chairs and states that she plans to sleep on them. Meanwhile, Carcian sits down and watches what happens with a look of great displeasure. The brunette, leaning back relaxed in the chosen spot, pays attention to the pink-haired one's gaze. She, looking at him, asks if he wants to say something, to which she refuses. Lillian is not happy with what is happening. She gets lost in her thoughts for a while. Then, with an incredibly serious face, the girl states that the boy has something to say. He, again dissatisfied with what is happening, reports that the brunette is not interested in him. The girl accepts his answer and continues to lie on a peculiar sofa formed by 3 chairs. Carcian looks at her with some indifference and coldness, resting his chin on his hand, and yet feeling some hesitation. He thinks with some anger before saying something. The pink-haired one gives in and approaches her, as Lijan realizes that he is one of those who cannot contain their curiosity. The girl asks the interested boy to come closer using sign language. He, ashamed and dissatisfied with what is happening, looks at her angrily. Carcian sits down on one knee next to the brown-haired woman, interested in what she has to say. Lilan whispers something in his ear slowly and silently while listening attentively. And attentively, jumping up, the fearful girl asks the redhead if everything is all right with him. Meanwhile, the guy is lying on the floor showing with his whole demeanor his displeasure and indignation. The brown-haired woman begins to mock the fallen man, asking him if she should take pity. Carcian gets up and quickly covers her mouth with his hand, telling her to stop. The girl looks at him dumbfounded unable to say anything. The young man says that, if she continues in the same vein, he will force her to remain silent until the end of her studies at the academy. Freud, who is watching all this from the side, sighs tiredly, not knowing what to say about it. Lillian, dissatisfied with the indignation of the person opposite, decides to play a little more. She abruptly sticks her tongue out of her mouth and confidently passes it over the other person's palm. Carcian blushes deeply. It was impossible to hide the indignation mixed with surprise on his face. He, looking like a red tomato, starts asking the girl what she is doing. The brunette, self-satisfied, understands that rumors cannot be believed. After all, the pink-haired one couldn't be a bad guy if he was so easy to tease. The young man, still blushing, quickly creates distance between him and the girl. Li Zhang notices and doesn't hesitate to say that his hand is especially salty. She, playfully smiling, concludes her speech by saying that she previously considered his palm sweet. Carcian, very amazed by what is happening, looks at her with strong doubt. The girl, having already grasped the knack of it, notices that everything is very amusing. She realizes that she should tease the young man more often because he is incredibly funny. Fjord, who understands nothing, asks his accomplices what they are doing. Arena Academy is based on the belief that everyone is equal before studying. And for this reason, it is strictly forbidden to mention within the academy grounds their social status, which the girl liked very much before enrolling. Lillian surprisingly asks the pink-haired man about what is in front of her. It was a large burgundy sofa that stood in the middle of the room. Carcian, calmly taking a sip from his cup, says it's a sofa, but the answer is not pleasing to the girl. She clearly sees the Lysian Duke's crest high up on the sofa. She was surprised that the owner of this thing was literally showing off his social status. The pink-haired one says this is more comfortable than those 3 hard chairs the girl was lying on before. Lillian, touched, reports that he said this as if he cared that she was lying on uncomfortable chairs. The dissatisfied young man asks her how long she will keep mocking him. But the brunette says she is speaking quite seriously. Carcian admits that even from the first meeting, he cannot understand what goes on in the girl's head. Meanwhile, she admits that he is cute, which makes her want to see more of his different reactions. The boy, having suddenly calmed down, starts asking a question, creating a somewhat terrifying atmosphere. He asks if he can find the answer to his question if he breaks the girl's head in half. Lijin, happily and confidently, asks him if he wants to try now. In response, she receives his denial and his contempt as well as his look. The brunette admits that this is boring because if he has already started, he must continue the dialogue in the same direction. She picks up a book and sits down with the young man and tells him what she is going to read today. Carcian looks at her indignantly, but the girl doesn't understand why the boy is dissatisfied again. He asks her why she is sitting here, but Lillian doesn't understand. She asks where she should sit, and then, referring to the sofa, asks if it is a place only for one boy. He tilts his head and says he didn't know the girl cared so much. Meanwhile, Lillian had already run towards the comfortable furniture, shouting that if she still could, it would be wonderful. The girl carefully sat down on the sofa. Surprise was reflected on her face. She was very happy because sitting there turned out to be very comfortable. Like on a cloud. Feeling how soft it was, she expressed unimaginable happiness. Carcian, observing the brown-haired woman, couldn't help but laugh, which displeased Lillian. He, smiling very happily, asked her if she liked it. The girl, showing indifference, said that it was fine to sit on the sofa. The pink-haired one said that this time, his head would remain intact, since everything was visible on her face. Meanwhile, he thought that his facial muscles were completely relaxed, so he should eat a protein-rich herbal meal tonight. A finger snap is heard, presaging something very unusual. A soft pink blanket appears out of nowhere, looking incredibly soft and warm. Lillian, without hiding the surprise on her face, looks suspiciously at the object that has formed near her. She asks him what made Carcian so kind, that he even put a blanket on her. But he simply tells her to go to bed. The brown-haired woman, without hiding the smile on her face, asks if the young man liked the way she exhaled in his ear. Then she suggests that the boy liked her tongue, which makes him blush deeply. She concludes that the pink-haired one is about to run out of steam, so it's better to finish for today. Lilan, covering herself with a blanket, thinks that Karsion is really very cute. She compares him to a pink kitten, which makes her smile warmly. The pink-haired one is like a cat who is wary of all strangers. The girl finally realizes everything. She is so satisfied with herself that the smile will not leave her face. She starts the conversation by apologizing for not understanding everything immediately. Carson doesn't understand anything. The brown-haired girl says she heard all sorts of rumors. She suggests that he didn't kill people before entering the school. Thoughtfully, he asked if all this was true. Coldness stood out in his voice. And seriousness. Lijin replies that all this is complete nonsense, and sinks into a sweet sleep. Soon all the rumors about the boy faded away, as if someone had put special effort into it. The next day, the girl wakes up thinking she has overslept again, and also realizes that this is her wonderful adaptation period. Suddenly, she hears strange sounds outside the door, and wonders who came. Fjord quietly asks his friend why he isn't coming in, but Carson only asks him to remain silent. The door opens, and the boys see the sleeping girl, which makes the blonde realize why he had to stay quiet. Fjord asks what is wrong with the pink-haired one lately. He assumes it's Li Zhang who is bothering the young man, to which he receives a cold look. The worried blonde mentally makes an assumption, but tries to deny it out loud, not believing it until the end. Carson says he is only treating the brown-haired girl nicely because she just transferred. After thinking a little, thus creating a short pause, he also added that this would only last a week. The pink-haired one looks around the room where the one they are talking about sleeps. The boy finishes by saying that he will just be careful with her so that she doesn't run away from them. Feeling peaceful and calm, Lilian lies back on the sofa, pretending to be asleep. She doesn't hear the boy's dialogue, but she assumes that Carson is very worried about her sleep. The boy slowly approaches the supposedly sleeping girl. Looking at her closely, she is moved by the fact that he intends to cover her ankles with a blanket. As a result, unable to bear it any longer, she abruptly gets up, letting everyone know she has woken up. Smiling with satisfaction, Lijin asks the young man the reason why he wanted to hide her. He steps back fearfully, and the brown-haired woman asks him if he underwent surgery to remove his wings, calling him an angel. She also refers to him as an angel kitten. While Fjord, seeing all this, is confused, suggesting that the girl likes to tease the pink-haired one. The girl says she is joking, but at the same time, he treats her very well. The young man leaves, telling her to keep sleeping, and she realizes that she cannot stop, because she really likes his reaction. Li Yon, stretching, reports that she woke up in a good mood, and also wonders if she should read a book now. She notices that Fjord is sitting at the table reading something. Come to think of it, she had heard a lot about Carson, but almost nothing about the blonde. He is the second most popular after the pink-haired one. Both are in their final year. The girl notices that he is always friendly and smiling, and that there are no visible flaws in the young man. The brown-haired girl is thinking about trying to play a prank on Fjord. She, approaching him, asks what he is reading, to which he replies by repeating the material covered today. Lijin realizes that, contrary to expectation, he answered sincerely, which surprises the boy. She moves as close to him as possible, trying until the end not to arouse suspicion. At one point, the girl stares intently at Fjord's shoe with her foot. The young man, shocked by what is happening, looks fearfully at the flying shoe. They look towards the wall that received the blow from the guy's shoe. In the end, it turned out that the brown-haired girl hit exactly the spot she was diligently aiming for. When her parents mocked Lilan in a million different ways, she remembered them, and it turned out to be quite amusing. Just in case, she apologizes to him, and rushes to bring his shoe back to the blonde. While he notices that the girl teases when she is bored, the fearful one asks if he can throw his shoes out the window. But the brown-haired woman answers resentfully that she doesn't have such a spoiled character. In the end, it turned out that Carson diligently observed everything that happened from the sidelines. He looked at them gloomily, feeling disgusted again, and his face expressing anger. Lion playfully flirts with Fjord, and he notices that she is cheerful and carefree. She offers to help him put on his shoes as a sign of reconciliation. Suddenly, the pink-haired one jumps up, heading towards his accomplices. The girl surprisingly asks him what is wrong. Not understanding anything, Carson, unable to contain his anger, turns towards the brown-haired woman. He, indignant, asks her if she even has any pride. She, surprised by what was happening, asks him why he drew such conclusions. The pink-haired one reports that she knelt too easily, and then orders her to get up immediately. Lijin wonders why the boy was so angry, since everything was just a joke. She wonders if this is exactly why he got so angry, while Fjord looks away in astonishment, later trying to catch up with his interlocutor. The blonde starts asking him what is wrong. Carson stops silently, showing absolutely no emotion. The blonde asks him to say at least something, trying to find out what he has in mind. The dangerous one finally turns towards the young man, looking at him with an angry gaze. Fjord only looks at him questioningly in response, still not understanding anything. With a sigh of resignation, he still stays behind, saying he understood everything, no matter what Carson says, because Lee John will leave them anyway. Several weeks have passed since the girl joined the club, and when the girl transferred to the academy, she didn't even imagine that everything would turn out this way. She felt incredibly relieved that everything was so fun. But if you think about it, on the other hand, there were some difficulties. Communication with them, the most influential people in the academy, and this atmosphere were tense. Lee John perfectly understood that rumors had an incredibly terrible power. She was very careful because she was in a special closed political space, a kind of secular world. She even hid when going to the club lounge. A stranger approached the girl, starting a dialogue with the fact that, according to what he had heard, the brown-haired woman had a pretty face. A boy resumes the conversation and looks angrily at Lillian. He says she is an insect lurking around Carson and Fjord. Just in case, a group of people will find out if this is the girl they were looking for. The redhead asks a young man named Harold if he is joking, because in his opinion, Lee Yon has nothing but her pretty face. Someone says that all this is just rumors, because no one will accept this wretch. And the brunette realizes that all this is too much. The redhead says that the girl has never been and never will be near Carson and Fjord. Lillian understands why this is allowed, and closely observes some of the details. The stranger had an academy uniform, without a wrinkle, although it looked normal, but made of expensive fabrics, in addition to well-maintained leather, and a brooch from a famous master. And most importantly, a feeling of superiority is easily read in the eyes of the group. She realizes that these children are aristocrats, and tells them that those rumors are true. The redhead shouts that she won't be able to attract the attention of Carson and Fjord forever. Continuing with her monologue, she asks if she even realizes that the difference between them is greater than between heaven and earth. Lee Jian realizes that if the girl had known that Carson was the first to approach, she probably would have slapped him. The brown-haired woman understands that all this cannot be solved so easily, but still decides to try. She, using all her theatrical skills, accepts that she is no match for them. The girl says she didn't join because she wanted to get closer to them. The pink-haired one, not believing a single word, asks her to explain why she is in the club. To this, the brown-haired woman responds easily and confidently that she joined the club for their beautiful faces. She asks if people would accept joining the club if Carson and Fjord made cute faces, to which a boy agrees and receives a blow to the head. The stranger calls his interlocutor an idiot for devoting all his attention to her. He says that no one will believe in friendship with aristocrats who influence society, trade, international relations, etc. Feeling proud of herself and incredibly angry, the redhead suggests that Li Jian believes in the academy's rules, after which she says that nobody cares about the laws. She says that the girl was simply tricked by Karshan's permission and Fjord's kindness, but in any case, they are not on her level. At the end of her speech, she adds that the brown-haired woman is just a memory and nothing more, pointing a finger at the shoulder of the woman sitting opposite. She told her to know her place, addressing her as if she were a nobody. Li Young realizes that this stranger is acting more childishly than she thought. The brown-haired woman holds a book with a pen in her hands, mentally preparing for subsequent events. She, showing indifference, says she understands and also asks what level this group is at. These words surprise the pink-haired girl, and angrily asks Lillian about what she said. She starts talking about how her parents control all the gold in the region, pointing out the difference between worlds. The blue-haired one assumes that the girl barely knows Andrew's name. The brown-haired woman smiled irritably, suppressing all the emotions that were inside her at that moment. The stranger proudly says that all the people in her group have influential families, after which threateningly orders the girl to kneel. Lilan asks them to clarify one point and finds out everyone's names. The redhead, suspecting something is wrong, asks her what she is doing. She continues to make cutting remarks to the brown-haired woman, smiling while Lilian pays no attention to all this. The stranger looks at the girl with disapproval, clearly sensing that something terrible is coming. Unexpectedly for everyone, the brown-haired woman finds herself in an unusual position, walking among all the people. She smiles, satisfied with herself, anticipating the taste of her victory, suddenly taking off from the ground. She quickly ran towards the distance. The company assumed it was a speed race. It was fun for Lilian because she wasn't wearing anything. She only knew how to run. A brown-haired woman stands in front of a group of 4 thoughtful people in the teacher's lounge. A man says he has heard enough and is surprised. He is glad that Lijin had a recording device with her during the incident, since they almost got away with it. In addition to asking the student to go and rest, the girl thanks the teacher and tells her she was very scared, but that she had to tell her. She also adds that she believes in the precepts established by the academy founders, and that the rules must be sacred for all students. All teachers find her speech incredible, and they feel proud. Lilan realizes that by emphasizing the rules, she will only highlight that group's disrespect towards the academy. She expected that joining a club everyone heard about would naturally attract attention, and this attention is not the most pleasant one, which makes you feel uncomfortable. The girl, walking down the hallway, tries to calm down, thinking that she has already gotten used to it. Tries to accept the fact that she is at the academy, that no one will touch her, but nothing comes out. Her anxiety only grows. The brown-haired woman tries to control her breathing, but her legs are increasingly unable to support her. She, very tired and weak, decides to go to the club lounge. Lillian wakes up on her favorite sofa, covered with a warm blanket. She makes sure she will get up as soon as she calms down. But this has been happening for a long time. The girl again has a dream with her memories, where she promises her parents that as soon as they wake up, they will all have a picnic together like before. When Lillian was 10 years old, misfortune struck her unhappy life, and her parents got sick with an incurable disease. When she was little, she started studying medical botany to help them. She couldn't give up, reminding herself of this every day, either with the hope of someday finding the answer, or trusting in a miracle. She assured herself that she had to try, and try until the last moment. Her motivation was based on a childish hope, and innocent of the best. The girl believed until the end that someday all her efforts would pay off. Despite all her efforts, her parents only got worse, and she understood it. In vain, she collected medicinal herbs and, clinging, she begged with all her might. All this continued until all her hopes finally faded away. After her parents' funeral, little Lillian locked herself in her room and didn't go anywhere. She met no one and talked to no one. She fought despair for a year and, however, she realized that it was her hope that made her feel this way. Leon did everything possible not to give up, but her efforts were not rewarded, and the girl wouldn't have expected anything better. She agrees with herself to live without hope, because despair alone is enough. The brunette realizes that there is no point in being upset about Fjord and Karsten, because at least their relationship won't last long, because that is reality. She was glad that there was no one in the club lounge, because you shouldn't show your weaknesses to other people. Fjord and Karsten are good friends, but only within the academy walls, where the importance of statuses is erased. She understands that she won't be able to be with them when their studies are over. There is no point in clinging to a relationship that is doomed to end. In the future, she will have to manage everything alone. Tears spring from Lijan's eyes, which she cannot hold back. It was only thanks to an unexpected meeting and the club lounge that she could feel comfortable here. The brown-haired girl finally decides to compose herself, shaking off the remnants of sadness. She understands that an audio recording is not enough, and that external help will be needed for the punishment to take effect. The girl decides that her request is somewhat insignificant. Fjord walks calmly through the academy hallway, reading a book. A man approaches him from behind and tells him he wants to talk about something. Without turning around, he apologizes because he is a little busy. Lijan asks him if he thought she was his fan, and the blonde finally turns around. The boy will ask in front of his interlocutor's swollen eyes, pronouncing her name inquisitively. She says she didn't come for a consultation, but for a request. Night falls. Behind the academy walls there is a terrifying darkness. Or perhaps reassuring. One of the youths repeats what he just heard and says they will take care of that bad group. Karsten then mentions the reason why the brown-haired woman joined them, and Fjord asks him if he joined after seeing the pink-haired man's face. The boy repeats in his head all the moments we spent together. He involuntarily remembers her smiles and her teasing towards him. Karsten says you can never know what Leon is thinking or feeling. He is ashamed and wonders if the girl liked his face back then. Fjord is surprised that his accomplice is so worried about this and invites him to listen to the audio recording. The young man says that rumors are already circulating in the academy and that they have started spreading faster since the expulsion of students is being discussed. He sighs and happily says that tomorrow everyone will know. Meanwhile, the pink-haired one keeps thinking about her face, which scares the blonde. Karsten is not sure that the brown-haired woman joined because of his face, since when they met, it didn't affect her. She acted as if she wasn't interested in the young man at all. Fjord, already tired of hearing this, says he doesn't want to discuss it. He asks the pink-haired one to at least do something about his blushing, to which the second one asks him to just shut up. The boy thinks about how Lillian teases him by saying such things with a cheeky face. She made him feel something with her demeanor and character. As the young man supposed, it was about this so-called. This is the reason why Karsten's mood improves again. The daily teasing hurt his pride. The girl always caught the pink-haired one off guard. He realizes that the girl is not afraid of him, that she doesn't feel a drop of fear. He assumes that is the reason. Nothing more. The young man doesn't understand how Lillian treats him, and this stresses him out. Fjord interferes with his comrade's thoughts, trying to say at least something. The dangerous one says he is still right in his assumptions. The blonde understands nothing and only looks inquisitively at his interlocutor. He soon says he is very sorry for Lillian because she will be forced to endure the boy's obsession. Karsten doesn't understand since when he started worrying about the girl. He repeats in his head all the recent events. The question of when he started worrying about the girl forms in his head. The young man's cheeks turned redder and redder. He didn't know what to say. That day, when he returned to the dormitory, he couldn't stop thinking about how the girl was leaning on the hard chairs. After which he hoped that strange feeling would disappear when he fixed everything. The pink-haired one begins to use space-moving magic, a complex spell that consumes a lot of mana. An ordinary mage would be afraid to use it, or lose consciousness after moving it. Fortunately, Karshan, who has incredible magical talent, is not categorized among weak mages. The boy rings the bell, using magic so as not to walk again. After the bell, a man bursts into the room and asks who dared to break into the young master's quarters. The man, seeing the pink-haired one, is very surprised that the boy is here at this hour, but simply asks him to bring a blanket. The man bows deeply and says he will bring everything immediately. Karshan wanted to object to something, but then, rushing the man, he still didn't change his request. A man runs down a huge hallway, wondering why the young man needs a blanket. The man suddenly realizes that he wants to give this item to someone. After this, he realizes that a cloth is needed to cover the body. The dangerous one draws attention to the huge sofa in his room. He understands that this will be enough to lie on. Suddenly, the young man uses magic, and the sofa slowly begins to disappear into a huge black hole. After a short period of time, the object was completely drowned in this dark abyss. Only high-ranking mages can use space magic, and depending on a person's abilities, small objects can be stored there, or large ones. And Karshan was the genius who used this type of magic to deliver the sofa. He doubted the necessity of his actions, fearing the brown-haired woman's reaction. The young man really hopes she likes it a lot. But for now, it is only hope. The boy, blushing, stood in a room filled with loneliness. He thinks she will be comfortable, because it is much better than picking up chairs and lying on them. Moreover, the girl will be able to enjoy a nap in the club lounge. And if you cover her, she can take a nap under the warm rays of the sun. Maybe, in this case, she will smile at him again. And this made the pink-haired one incredibly happy. But then he comes to his senses because the girl wouldn't like Karshan, but a sofa with a blanket. If Lijin had settled down comfortably, she would have been more comfortable. And the boy realized what would happen to him in this scenario. He would stop thinking that the girl felt uncomfortable. He would feel calmer. He would no longer need to pay attention to her. Nothing would irritate him. In the end, it turned out that this didn't help. And she continued to get on his nerves. It irritated him that his heart was jumping out of his chest, and he couldn't control it. The boy asked himself many questions, and he didn't understand many things. He sits thoughtfully, paying no attention to anything, obsessed with his thoughts. Abruptly, Lijin begins to tease him again, which is why he turns completely red again. Suddenly, raising his voice, he asks her to stop doing this. The girl looks at the boy, who has turned around without understanding anything. She realizes that she probably did something wrong. Her face expresses surprise and annoyance. The brown-haired woman apologizes to the young man, telling him that this will not happen again. He, ashamed of everything that is happening, looks at an uncertain point, not wanting to show his eyes to her. The boy suddenly turns towards her, and he feels many emotions at once. She looks away, feeling some embarrassment, an awkwardness lurking between them. Karshan, without looking her in the eyes, says it was a joke because she teases him every day. And he teases her too. And then he realizes that he cannot push the girl away. Meanwhile, Leon is in the girls' dormitory of the academy. The brown-haired woman wakes up thinking she had a nightmare again. She doesn't understand if there is any point in trying to cheer up. Suddenly, someone knocks on the room, and someone waits patiently outside the door. The girl thought it was a man giving out alms. She lay back calmly and decided to pretend she wasn't in the room. Then, hearing the knock again, she still opens it, warning the person outside. She, sleepy and disheveled, opens the door asking who has come. And suddenly, the girl meets the pink-haired one's gaze, which surprises her greatly. The problem was that it was a girls' dormitory with a boy currently in it. She fearfully, without saying anything, slams the door in his face. Lilan begins to doubt that she is not in the men's department. Feeling surprised and even a little angry, the girl slowly looks towards the door with what she just imagined. In front of her, she sees a pink-haired man. He whispers her name quietly. She closes the door again, disappointed that she hadn't imagined it after all. Suddenly, Lillian realizes that the boy called her by her name for the first time. She, feeling uncertainty and some anxiety, decides to take a big step. The girl opens the door slightly and asks what's wrong. Karshan tries to answer something, but he feels some confusion. The brown-haired woman is very worried that the young man will remain silent, thinking that something serious has happened. She suddenly realizes that if someone sees them now, they will get into trouble, so she drags the boy into the room. She slams the door shut. The pink-haired one looks at her surprised. He starts blushing and panicking when he realizes he is in Lijin's room. The girl asks him what's wrong, very worried and fearing that big problems have arisen. Karshan asks why she is holding his hand. The brown-haired girl is very surprised by herself. She apologizes and assumes that the boy doesn't like to be touched. He replies in the negative, which puts the brown-haired girl in a dead end. The dangerous one moves away from his interlocutor and says he likes both the fact that she touches him and the fact that she calls him by his name. Leon, surprised by what she heard, stares at the young man with her mouth open. And now, from now on, she asks to call him simply Kaon. Meanwhile, the girl imagined him in the form of a cat. She doesn't understand how a boy could like her if they only recently met. Leon had previously thought that the young man did not like her joking. But maybe he just wanted to make friends. The girl easily accepts all this information, because everyone likes such a handsome boy. And good-hearted. However, the problem is that if Karshan wants to be closer to her than just a friend, then the brown-haired woman wants to keep him at a distance. She knew that expectations only leave scars. Therefore, gathering all her strength into a fist, she still gathered the courage to decide to say something. Li Young said she liked everything, smiling warmly and gently at the young man. He, surprised by what he heard, finally turns in her direction. The boy, upon hearing her laugh, only wanted to record her voice and listen to it every day. The brown-haired woman addresses him by his name, which makes him blush more and more. She said it was very awkward because she didn't even call him by his full name. But he was already reacting like that, starting to tease again. He repeats her name again while approaching her. The girl asks him if he is in a bad mood and reaches her hand to his face. Karshan dares to look her in the eyes, and Lijin realizes how docile he is. Suddenly, the pink-haired one changes his face, looking at his interlocutor with horror. This greatly scares the brown-haired girl. She doesn't understand what is happening and how she should react to it. He notices the state of the girl's eyes and severely asks her if she cried. Lijin replies in the negative. The young man's silhouette becomes somewhat like a ghost. He starts asking her the reason, suggesting that it's because of those who offend her. But she denies everything again. The girl says that if she makes faces, she could become ugly, which scares Karshan. Although in his thoughts, he understands that he will remain handsome. The dangerous one asks her not to cry, telling her that everything will be fine. The brunette is very moved by how the boy takes care of her. She is pleasantly surprised. She realizes that she will not change her mind and sighs with relief. Meanwhile, Fjord sits in his office, thinking about today. Lilian gives the blonde a pen with a recording of the conversation and makes a request to him. She says it's a copy and that the original is now in the teacher's lounge. She cannot believe what she hears when she hears it's a copy. A smile is visible on her face. The girl confesses her plans and asks to use the item so that the rumors spread throughout the academy. Recalling all these events, Fjord smiles very satisfied. Lillian is smarter than he thought. That incident was an obvious status discrimination. More and more students were dissatisfied with this. That company of 3 people was doing all this, and apparently had no intention of stopping. The blonde understands that the trio's expulsion is a matter of time. Moreover, he will notice that the brunette already knows the academy well. Suddenly, Fjord becomes serious and realizes that all this is not enough. It's about aristocracy, and since the girl is smart enough, she guesses it too. He knows that a simple girl can suddenly disappear. But now this shouldn't be a problem. Now Lilan is the object of Karshan's attention, which makes it very unlikely that she will be in danger. Students gather in the academy courtyard and share the latest news among themselves. The conversation revolves around the fact that those 3 aristocrats were actually expelled. Some students point out that to fly out of the academy, you have to try hard. Fjord, hearing that even the director inserted his word, was very surprised, but one of the teachers says that the matter was too noisy because they seriously violated the rules. All students whisper simultaneously behind the academy walls about what happened the other day. In the end, it turned out that the families of all 3 suddenly collapsed overnight. While the workers were away, an earthquake occurred and all the mines collapsed. The ship got caught in an unknown storm, after which it quickly sank. A strange fire surrounded the warehouses and destroyed all the goods stored for several years. And it is possible that all these accidents are not accidental. Meanwhile, Li Young sits thoughtfully on the sofa, thinking seriously about the latest news. It was a disaster. Her face looked too grim and worried. She didn't know if the hands of justice were hanging over them. But the only good thing was that she no longer had to worry about their possible return. She no longer had friends, and now they don't even talk to her. Fjord asks what the problem is if the girl always sits in the club lounge. It seems to him that everything in her life remains the same. She still doesn't even communicate with her peers. Lilan thinks for a moment and realizes that something has changed. Suddenly, a pink rose appears in front of the girl, and a familiar voice calls her name. It was Karsian who said that as soon as he saw the flower, he immediately thought of the brown-haired woman, and that he was what changed in Lilian's life. The pink-haired young man. She thanks him for thinking of her, but also tells him that he didn't have to pick the flowers to show them to her. The boy is a little confused. He gets angry, still holding the rose in his hands. The brown-haired woman, to cheer him up, says that since he already picked it, he needs to put the plant in a vase. The pink-haired one agrees with her and says he will bring everything now. The boy teleports, and the girl asks Fjord why he uses teleportation if he can ask for a vase. He, thinking that Lilan knows everything, says that Karshan has a lot of mana. The girl notices that the pink-haired one has become more open and sweet. No matter what she says, he always smiles and tries to please her. He has already brought her 5 multicolored blankets. A brown-haired woman sitting on the sofa, hugging a blanket. She thinks she really likes this item. It seems to her that all this is because he is enchanted by the opposite sex. The girl didn't want to scold the boy. She hoped that they would remain friends for as long as possible. She starts wondering aloud if her friends will be friends with each other if she leaves. Fjord jokingly comments that he has never given her flowers before, but she already considers him a friend. Karshan, hearing all this, turns towards the brown-haired woman with concern. He asks if they are closer, and that the girl met the pink-haired one before the blonde. But she sees no difference. She asks what difference it makes who is closer to her, and the young man replies that the difference is quite large. Carson begs his interlocutor to tell him who is more important to her. She only replies jokingly that it doesn't matter who she chooses. The boy sees something different in her joke and starts blushing, which surprises the brown-haired woman. She quickly says this is a joke, and the young man replies somewhat coldly that it's funny. Lilan asks him how she would rate him. Both are dear to her. The pink-haired one is completely annoyed, feeling like the unhappiest person in the world. Fjord watches everything that happens, surprised, and the girl looks at him surprised. Karsian gets upset because he is only her friend, and the girl asks him if he wants more. The boy refuses, scared, and shouts that in no case did he think of anything other than friends. Or about the wedding. The brown-haired woman is surprised that in such a short time, he has already managed to think about marriage. Lijin changes the subject and says that both of them are aware that they are her only friends in the entire academy. But she is happy about it. A sincere smile appears on her face. Pink Hair reports that he assumes that if he makes more friends, then everything could change. The brown-haired woman did not understand why he had that expression on his face. But she thinks if the boy thinks so, so be it. The girl thinks that perhaps Carson doesn't realize that his main job is to scare away people who want to befriend her. She dreamed of making friends through books. It seemed great to her. Suddenly, Lee Young sees a huge object in front of her, blocking her way. She understands it's just a box, and quite large. A blonde girl peeks out from behind the object and looks surprised at the man in front of her. She, coming out from behind the boxes, approaches the brown-haired woman, shouting her name. The blonde says that she is even kinder than everyone says. This girl's name was Jane, and it turned out she was her roommate. Lee Jun discovered that they were studying in the same class, that the girl had returned after an academic leave, so she was 2 years older than the girl. The brown-haired woman said she was delighted to meet you, and was about to introduce herself, but realized it was unnecessary. Jane, turning casually towards Legion, which annoys her, she says she recognized her name by the sign. The girl asks her to address her informally because she is already used to talking like that with all her friends. She explains that otherwise she will have to officially address the blonde. The brown-haired woman says she wants them both to be comfortable, because now they are roommates. Jane still agrees with her, and says it will really be better this way. Thus the girl met her new neighbor, and most importantly, her friend. Lillian had a good feeling, and she would stay at least until the next day, squinting her eyes due to the sunny weather. The brown-haired girl reluctantly wakes up and calls her neighbor. The blonde girl apologizes for waking her up, but the girl says it's all right, and still warns her that on weekends she usually wakes up after 12. Jane laughs and, asking a rhetorical question, asks again. After that, she turns around, and Lee Jian sees a completely made-up man in front of her. The brown-haired woman isn't even surprised. Rather, she looks at her interlocutor with fear. She abruptly says she was almost speechless, which made Jane laugh. It turned out that Jane put on makeup because she was going shopping. Lillian focuses on the fact that her neighbor arrived unexpectedly. Jane suddenly falls silent and looks closely at her reflection in the mirror. Unexpectedly, the blonde woman invites her roommate for a walk. A spontaneous idea turns into a plea that soon proves impossible to refuse. The girls were on a crowded shopping street. Lee Jian looks at the sights with surprise, and the silhouettes surrounding her. For her, walking down a very crowded street was something very exciting. She thanks her neighbor for convincing her to go for a walk. The blonde girl, smiling sweetly, only thanks the brown-haired woman in return. Jane, succumbing to the influence of emotions, shouts that they will buy absolutely everything. In the end, no matter what the girls said, they still carefully selected the items before buying them. Lillian made decisions carefully, as if it were a beautiful embroidered scarf, a table lamp, or a beautiful glass bottle that could be placed on the table. The brown-haired girl realized that if she walked alone, she wouldn't pay attention to anything. But now it's a shopping trip with a friend, so everything is fine. The girl noticed that many people were buying some kind of cookies. The blonde asks if her neighbor will buy this dessert. Lillian offers to buy it anyway so they can have a snack. The girls look at the shop window with admiration, observing the different types of cookies. The brunette didn't understand why they were all heart-shaped. In fact, this heart could be given to someone you like in honor of Cookie Day. But she didn't know that. Both look at the huge selection, surprised by the quantity. Lijin suddenly sees a strangely shaped dessert, and it seems to her like a cat. Jane asks her neighbor what kind of guy she has. But the brown-haired girl just says she likes good guys. The blonde girl asks if she can be kind. And Lijun, busy choosing cookies, says she can't, but it should be that way. The girl looks forward confidently, while her friend becomes shadowed by surprise. The brown-haired woman finishes her answer by saying that otherwise the boy will be ignored. Regarding herself, Jane says that the main thing for her is that they find common ground. The blonde admits that there aren't many people she can communicate with, and Lillian agrees with understanding. Suddenly, the girl asks if her neighbor has a boyfriend she is close to. As an example, Jane cites a friend from the club, thinking confidently that there is someone popular there. The brunette says there is one. That Fjord is a very nice guy. And only at this moment does the girl suddenly realize what she said. She starts trying to explain to her friend that she was thinking about something wrong. Jane exclaims, horrified that the girl is very promiscuous. Lillian realized that everything was wrong and decided it was better to go back to eating cookies. The brunette mentally apologizes to the blonde. And at that moment he sneezes. Dark night arrived. Jane walked calmly down the long corridor of the academy. The girl's thoughts are occupied with her thoughts about what happened and about her new friend. She perceives Lijun as a good person and thinks she will also be a good friend. However, the blonde was not like that at all, no matter how much she wanted her to be. Another dark silhouette suddenly appears in the corridor. Jane bows deeply to a man who appears out of nowhere. She repeats the information that she and Lillian are neighbors, although she already talked about this once. The girl says she will continue reporting in the future. She addresses the stranger as Mr. Karshan, mentally apologizing to her new supposed friend. She asks about what actions of the brown-haired woman should she warn about. Pink Hair tells her to simply do what they agreed upon. And Jane begins to doubt that he should talk about the girl's interests. The blonde then realizes that the boy is in a bad mood and that he needs to do his job. Lillian shouts her neighbor's name for her to return to normal. Jane says that although 2 years have passed, nothing has changed. The brown-haired woman assumes that the girl is more worried because she missed a lot, and her guesses turn out to be correct. Lillian suggests eating cookies to cheer up. The girl remembers the moment when, while the brunette was in a hurry, she told him to take some cookies. They bought a lot of cookies so they could try them all, and so that at least some of them would definitely be to her liking. Suddenly, Jane asks her friend to look around. The redhead gave the boy a bag of cookies shaped like that same kitten. Another close couple also exchanged bags of cookies. The blonde asks her friend if she knows what day it is. The teacher, upon finishing the lesson, remembers that the cookie festival is forbidden within the academy walls due to annual poisoning attempts with a love potion. It was at that moment that Lillian realized what kind of day it was and why people were secretly exchanging gifts. Jane was very surprised when she learned that the brown-haired woman had bought cookies to share with her. The blonde liked it a lot. She was very happy. She asks not to do this because it is cookie day, on which a girl gives a gift to a boy. The girl invites the brown-haired woman to treat the boy she is friends with. She offers to give these cookies to someone in the club lounge. Leon refuses because it could have consequences, and they are not such close friends. The brown-haired woman thinks in her mind that this applies especially to Karsian. Jane asks if her friend will choose an earth-flavored tomato or an earth-flavored tomato. She says that an earth-flavored tomato is better. And Lee Jian, meanwhile, thinks that a line must be drawn between her and the pink-haired one because she is confused. The girls say goodbye happily and go about their business. The brunette realizes that she must do what her friends do, even though she is not sure what her heart feels. She, at least relying on something, asks herself to be strong and having no time to enter. She greets everyone. Lee Jian sees an image of Fjord lying, exhausted on the floor, and a fire guarding the room. Behind the blonde stands the evil Karshan, ready to hit everything he sees in his path. The liar tells the girl to come in. The pink-haired one comes to his senses upon seeing her. Fjord, without stopping talking, says he doesn't know anything and asks the dark-haired girl to explain everything to the boy. Suddenly, the door closes in front of Lillian. She doesn't even have time to move. A moment later, an incredibly bright glow suddenly erupts behind the still closed door. The girl, seeing what has formed in front of her, looks forward in surprise. A radiant Karsian appears in the doorway and asks what they will do today. Lejan says that the room a couple of moments ago was in complete ruin, as well as Fjord's condition. The pink-haired one says that he didn't touch the room or the blonde, because supposedly he is incapable of such a thing. The girl asks him if he is kind, to which he receives her consent. She, smiling sincerely at the young man, asks him to be kind. The boy looks at her with some relief and smiles back at her. A second later, that glow reappears in his eyes. He tries to say something. Lee Jian realizes that it is unlikely to ignore this. She remembers the quote that being smart means pretending to be stupid in time. The brown-haired girl abruptly starts the topic of Cookie Day, talking about how everyone, despite the prohibition, exchanged gifts. She admits that she had no idea about this holiday before. The pink-haired one got very upset when she heard this, even more than the girl expected. Lee Jian asks if the boys received many cookies since they are celebrities. Fjord said it was enough already, and also shared the story that Carson was caught with this last year, and he no longer accepts these gifts. The pink-haired one remembered upon hearing this that despite the prohibitions everyone still exchanges. The blonde mentally begs the brunette to give cookies to Carson so that he finally calms down. Tiered Fjord begins to wonder why the boy thought he liked the brown-haired girl. He suddenly fixes his gaze on some point lost in his thoughts. Legion clearly suggests that the boys spend a day without cookies so as not to break school rules. Carson, horrified, looks at her sadly and surprised, disappointed with this whole world. The girl burned with shame because of this, and the pink-haired one's gaze only made it worse. The brown-haired woman buries her face in the blanket so as not to show any emotion to the boys. She abruptly realizes that the room is incredibly silent, although there were two other people besides her. Legion decides to take a look around. The first thing she sees is the incredibly annoyed Carson sitting on the floor. This image terribly scared her, and she still felt ashamed. Unable to bear it, she hides her face in the blanket again so as not to see anything. The girl still tried to insist that there would be no cookies on Cookie Day. She looked at Fjord, who carefully asked her to look under the table. Lilan looked at him in surprise, not immediately understanding what he meant. Looking slowly under the table, the brown-haired woman notices a bag of cookies. The blonde man begs the girl, in sign language, to give it to Carson to save him. She reflects on the fact that previously the two were close friends, and they had fun without her. Fjord would faint if he heard something like that. The young man looked pleadingly at Lilan, still insisting on his own. She doesn't know what to do now, she can't decide. The girl looked at Carson again, who was still sitting in the same place. She still makes a decision, and reaches for the bag of cookies. Suddenly she changed direction, and quickly puts her hand in her bag, taking the dessert, which she had already bought with her own hands. She heads in the right direction. She calls him by his name, and asks him to take it. The boy raises his head hesitantly. With a sincere smile, the girl hands him a bag of sweets. Carson stared at the much-desired cookie in disbelief. The young man jumps up, still not believing it, and asks if this is for him. Lee Jian insists that he take the bag as a sign of their friendship. The pink-haired one, shedding a tear of happiness, thanks him for the gift. The girl is surprised how so much joy can be experienced from a single bag of cookies. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door, and Fjord says he will open it. Lillian sees a girl approaching the blonde and hand him a package. The blonde boy says that people normally don't come to his club lounge when Carson is there, but some are very brave. Fjord shows off all his gifts. The girl is shocked by the quantity there. The brown-haired woman, hearing that this is not good at all, asks if all of it is really a waste. The blonde replies that he cannot eat it alone, and that he cannot give it to anyone either, since it might contain a love potion. The girl, whose face expressed concern and sadness, asked him if he really throws away all the cookies every year. Karshan, who abruptly joined the conversation, says that he only received it from Lilan. The brunette realizes that Fjord is right when remembering how the girl's hands trembled when she gave him the gift. Suddenly, the girl calls the blonde, and he looks at her amazed. Lijin hands him the bag the boy prepared for the pink-haired girl. The young man asks surprised why he is receiving it. The brown-haired woman says it's in honor of Cookie Day, and jokingly adds that she didn't put anything in it. She says she will leave for a while, leaving the blonde and Karshan standing behind him, looking at her grimly, alone. Before the door closes, and the girl leaves, Fjord tries to shout her name and ask for it to be late, but it was already too late. Lijin thinks the boy did nothing wrong, but he deserved it. An incredibly strong glow suddenly erupts from the room and makes you lose your balance. The brown-haired woman is very surprised. She doesn't understand what happened in the room. Later, she remembers that when a mage gets angry, his surge of magic will be like an explosion. She decided to ignore it and run to the dormitory before it was too late. Several long days have passed since that very moment. Li Jian walks down the corridor and thinks that, for the holiday she learned about that day, it went well for her. And if the relationship between the boys worsens, she will take the matter into her own hands. The medical botany teacher, George, announces that today everyone is working in groups. George was in a bad mood, but despite this, he was talented at teaching. He gives students a lot of information that is not in the textbooks, as he practiced for a long time before becoming a teacher, although it seems that half the students don't know it. Because medical botany is not popular among students, the girl wondered why she had to work in groups. There would be no problems with an individual assignment. The only thing is that she didn't communicate with anyone in the group. She decides to think positively, because it is an opportunity to make new friends. And at that moment, a boy tells her that, if she has no one to do it with, that she should do it herself. Another redhead girl approaches Lillian and asks if she can ask her a question. She wonders if the rumor that Karshan likes her is true. The brown-haired woman calmly replies in the negative, because there is no reason for it. The redhead looks at her with contempt, trying to make eye contact, sighing and smiling at the same time. The stranger agrees with the girl. She, having finished writing a strange piece of paper, hands it over to Lillian. There were 2 names on the paper. Apparently, it was intended for some kind of contest. The winner was not a brown-haired woman. The girl feels a strange sensation, realizing that she has a bad feeling. If you think about it that way, Carson has no reason to love Lilan. She doesn't think he likes her very much. If you look at it objectively, the pink-haired one has a pure personality and kind. Even someone from the ruling family cannot compare to him. So he really has no reason. The redhead starts to tease and make fun of the girl. Lilan didn't like being looked at with such an evaluating gaze. She couldn't let it go. Her patience was running out. The brown-haired girl, smiling, thanks the redhead for her support and tells her she trusts her in the next group lesson, treating her like a potato. The stranger nearly burns with shame upon hearing these words. The redhead starts to be indignant about being called a potato, and Lillian, paying no attention, says she knows a suitable place for them to work. A boy agrees to go with a girl while she thinks about not judging a book by its cover. The girl, sitting on the sofa and wrapped in a blanket, is nervous about having such a group. And Karshan asks what happened. She says her leg just hurts, and the boy offers to give her a massage. The brown-haired woman looks at him, surprised upon hearing this proposal. The young man, blushing, says he had no malicious intent, that he was just worried. She says he is a master, and that she almost accepted without realizing it. The girl starts teasing him again, while Fjord sits and listens to all this. reminding her that he is also in the room. Leon says that the boy cheered her up, and then mentions the rumors she heard about him. Karshan suddenly became serious and asked what kind of rumors they were. The girl says the rumor is that the pink-haired one likes her. The boy asks her if this news disappoints her, but she denies it. Her only concern was that they were also discussing the probable outcome, and she would have preferred the rumors that Karshan liked her. But she couldn't say it directly. Otherwise, she would cry. When the brunette sees how sad the pink-haired girl is, she remembers how she cried after her parents' death, and that made her feel weak. She says she really hopes that he won't have marriage problems in the future because of the rumors. The boy replied that she shouldn't worry, because he would still be with her. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door, and someone says they have come to pick up Lilan. The redhead immediately becomes cautious. His coldness and aggression gradually mature, thanks to space movement. He teleports to the door. Upon opening the door, the young man looks menacingly at the newcomer and asks who he is. The girl says that Carson scared the stranger and approaches them quickly. She asks him if he came for a group lesson, to which she agrees. The pink-haired boy asks what exactly brought him here, and the boy starts apologizing. Lijun asks Karshan to wait because she needed to speak with this person. The pink-haired one, smiling sweetly at the girl, nods and says everything is fine. The brunette asks what's wrong because they agreed to meet at another time. The stranger complains that his head hurts, and Lijun replies that it is serious. She tells him that, if he doesn't feel well, he shouldn't go to rest, and also reminds him to take his medicine. The boy agrees and says that since he has no more questions, it's better for him to leave. At first, he starts moving away by crawling, as he was lying before, but gradually he speeds up. Seconds later, his crawling turns into a real run, standing up, of course. Finally, the girl wishes him a speedy recovery. Meanwhile, Karshan, who was watching all this, kept his eyes on Lilan. The brown-haired girl suddenly realizes that he left not because he felt unwell, but because he didn't want to work in the group. She gets angry for being so gullible and convinces herself that working in a group is bad. The brown-haired woman arrives at her room. She is greeted by Jane, who says she liked today's lesson, after which she offers to take a walk around the city. Unfortunately, the offer is rejected because Lillian needs to finish a group lesson. The blonde tells her roommate that she has received letters. She takes them out from somewhere and hands over 2 nice letters. The girl thanks her friend, smiling because her mood has finally improved. They were letters from my aunt, since family seals could not be used at the academy. Others were used. Lilan remembers how, when she was little, she asked her loved one what the name of the yellow bird flying from above was. The brown-haired woman notes that she will need to read this, and then write a reply. Suddenly, getting a little darker, she also notices another detail. The scent of the band emanating from the letters always remains unchanged. Jane turns her head and carefully observes her roommate's actions. Li Zhang puts the letter in a box next to the bed, which contained dozens of similar letters. The blonde girl asks her why she hasn't opened a single letter. The girl just carefully closes the box, with no intention of answering her interlocutor's question. She starts wandering somewhere, giving Jane only information as an answer that is not worth reading. The brown-haired woman, feeling trust and some doubts, still confirms to herself the fact that group work is bad. She expected nothing from the first group member. From the patient one, the second participant is Papa Redhair, who was already 30 minutes late. The third participant, whose name Lilio couldn't remember, came, but unforeseen circumstances occurred. He left the group, having previously said that his grandfather's former lover had died, and that he had to go to the funeral right now. The girl let him go, concluding to herself that it was not a group assignment, but a group punishment. The brown-haired woman, who went alone to complete the assignment, noticed that it was cloudy today. She remembered that she used to dig up medicinal herbs in these mountains with her mother. but then her aunt forbade it. But despite the prohibition, the aunt brought the girl all the herbs she needed. And Lilan remembered the story of the orphan boy and realized that he was less fortunate than her. She thought that if she were younger, she could call them parents. But she didn't succeed, which she regretted. They originally wanted to add her to the family register. But when they were halfway through, everything was cancelled. On the fence, there is a cheerful sign informing that it is dangerous to go further because there are monsters there. Although it was really dangerous ahead, there was still a hole in the fence. One of the reasons for carrying out this group task was that most medicinal herbs use mana as a nutrient source. But due to their high density, these herbs were located in the same place where most monsters gathered. A strange sound was heard nearby, which the brown-haired woman clearly heard. She turned around, but after a couple of seconds decided to stop at what she only imagined. There was a man standing on a branch of one of the trees, watching the girl carefully. Lilan was filled with happiness because she really wanted to complete this task. She saw an herb flower that could be used against sweat and, when she was a child, the girl prepared this antidote for her father to use after training. The girl was very happy because this plant cannot be bought in the market due to its absence. And she managed to find where it grows. Although she was excited, she didn't stop looking. And she was also prepared for all eventualities. However, it turned out that the brown-haired woman was not attentive enough, and a huge boar-like creature appeared behind her. Suddenly, someone wounds the monster and shouts at the girl to be careful. Karshan appeared out of nowhere, who was already pressing Lilan against his chest with all his might, for which she was clearly unprepared. The first thing she noticed was the clean scent coming from the pink-haired man, and there was a strange density to him that was impossible to get rid of. Only his breath suddenly spread throughout the girl's body. The brown-haired woman abruptly returned from her addictive thoughts to reality. She asked the boy what he was doing here, to which he asked her what she was doing here alone. Lijan understood that the young man was worried. And that's why he came here, and she also felt ashamed of his pitying look. She said she was preparing so she could scare away the monster herself. The girl says that if he hadn't intervened, the monster wouldn't have attacked her, and the boy simply smashed the creature. Karshan abruptly used disappearance magic, saying she shouldn't look at the monster's remains. He said a girl should always only see the best. He cited her beautiful face as an example, and how good he was even irritated the brown-haired girl a little. She asked if, under such circumstances, she should look at the pink-haired boy every day. The boy, exploding, murmured that he liked her very much, that he was a student, and that was good. Suddenly, Lilan noticed small raindrops falling on her. It started raining, and she hid under a tree, happy to have had time to collect some medicinal herbs. Medicinal. She was so busy that she didn't notice Karshan, who followed her, after which she called the young man, trying to find him. The pink-haired one immediately appeared in front of her. Hearing the call of a familiar person, the girl compared the boy to a fairy that appears every time she calls his name. Suddenly the rain stopped, which made her very happy. And she asked where the pink-haired boy was. He said he wanted to find a flower that looked like his beloved, but he didn't find the right one. So he brought her a flower that looked like him, which would be a reminder of him for her. The boy asked her if she liked the flower, and the girl just looked at him surprised. After a couple of seconds, Lilian accepted the plant from Karshan and took the flower from his hands into hers. She inhaled the wonderful aroma of the bud and said they were very similar. When she was a child, the girl often asked her mother about the names of the objects surrounding her, and every time the father answered her in a calm voice, without a trace of irritation. In one of the conversations, Lilan learned that pink roses mean passionate love. Karshan invites her to Geo because it stopped raining a long time ago, and she is thinking about childhood memories, feeling nostalgic and perhaps some happiness. The girl accepts his offer to leave. She realizes that the boy really looks a lot like a pink rose, since everyone refused to do the assignment in the group. Lion went alone and stayed safe. only because the pink-haired girl protected her. During the weekend, no one from the group contacted her, so she completed the work herself, originally designed for 4 people. Suddenly, she saw the guy who drew the diagram, and then ran away. Indignant, she asked if the young man's grandfather's former lover was the grandmother. The boy, whose name turned out to be Hans, confirmed Lillian's assumption by looking at her with guilt. He said that his grandparents were divorced, and that everything in his family was complicated, so he couldn't explain it clearly. He asked for forgiveness, suggesting that the 2 of them had to do the work of 4. The girl said she did the work alone, so she just wrote down his name. And the boy asked what about Emila. It was the redhead potato that the brunette waited for 40 minutes. But she received neither her nor any news from her. He said that Hans was the only one who showed up. But then he disappeared. Lillian told the young man that she calls Emila a chatterbox because she talks too much. She said that, although it wasn't noticeable in her, she had a sense of humor. But in response, the girl asked if the young man was joking in front of his friends. Hans, changing the subject, asked who this blonde girl was who was always next to Lillian, to which she replied that her name was Jane. The boy, sighing and dreaming of something, said that Jane is a very beautiful name. In the end, it turned out that he was head over heels in love with the blonde, and dreamed of going out with her. Suddenly, the brown-haired woman demanded that the young man immediately leave her sight. The assignment turned out to be not as difficult as the girl expected, and alone she managed to achieve good results. At least she was glad she did it. But the teacher abruptly said that this work was unsatisfactory. Lillian looked surprisingly at the frowning man sitting in front of her. He reports that he would pay more for weeds on the road than for this. The brown-haired woman asks about the reliability of the information about the assignment, trying to find out what is going on. The professor says that the more he talks, the more convinced he is that he was not mistaken in his assessment. Despite the teacher's words, the girl understood that Karshan was not involved in this, and that she herself was doing everything. She, trying to remain calm, directly says that no one helped her with her work. The man slowly names the required page number and the name of the plant. Lillian immediately replies that everything is correct, because she wrote about this flower. He reports that they learned about the special properties of this plant only a week ago, so the girl could not have known this information. The professor also lists other flowers and says that identifying these medicinal herbs requires practice. He concludes by saying that they did not examine these plants in detail in class. The brown-haired girl understood that this was a failure, because she didn't listen in class, as she already knew all the information. And then she specially collected the rarest herbs, which was her mistake. She wanted to understand what she should do next in this situation. Because her opponent was Professor George, the girl should have simply told the truth, making her story as brief as possible so as not to bore him. She never wanted to show her knowledge of herbs in class because she didn't want to have to answer the professor's questions and receive pats on the back. Because of this, she would have immediately had a path for postgraduate studies and a master's degree. These zombies were already walking around the teacher's office now. Li Jian admitted that she learned about the plant's properties when she was a child, so she thought the city had also known it for a long time. She said she could mark the location of some herbs as evidence. The girl believed that this was the shortest possible way, so George couldn't deduct points from her. She didn't know that the plant was only ornamental, so one had to be a weirdo to study it. And the eccentric, who a week ago defended his scientific work on this flower, now looked curiously at the second eccentric. Unexpectedly, he asked her if she knew anything about the benefits of the Siger K. Japcho plant. Lillian said that it is a medicinal plant useful for improving blood circulation and maintaining tone. Excessive use of these herbs causes toxin accumulation in the body. In side effects, George thinks that the student who almost got a perfect score on the entrance exam was probably thinking that she wasn't sleeping through the lesson or looking out the window during his classes. He became furious, realizing that the reason was that she had known everything for a long time. The professor apologizes, and the girl thinks that he is one of those people who are ready to admit their mistake. The man says he will correct the grade to excellent, since the girl has achieved a lot on her own. He is already starting to talk about how it should go, when he is suddenly interrupted by the voice of his interlocutor. The professor invites her to study with him, but she immediately informs him that she is leaving now. Feeling scared and with a kind of terrible pressure on herself, Lijun thanks the teacher and literally flies out of the office. The professor laughs quietly, rethinking everything that happened in the last few minutes. Some time later, Han still asks the brown-haired woman to introduce Jane to him. During this time, some things in the girl's life began to change. For example, George began to ask her questions often in class. And after every lesson, Han still bothered her. If you think about it, that life at the academy can be called successful. Lately, everything is quite calm. Hans, coming out from the corner, insists and begs Lilin to arrange a casual meeting for him. And the brunette no longer puts him off and furiously shouts at him that he wants too much. Jane herself slowly pokes her head out from another corner, watching what is happening closely. It seems to her that the girl has a new boyfriend, which horrifies her. The inevitable dreaded exam period has arrived. The curriculum is divided into general education and special subjects, and although special subjects constitute half of the curriculum, this does not mean that the grades in general subjects do not carry weight. Han still asks her to introduce Jane to him, and asks if Lion herself has anything more important than exams. He says he doesn't even know what the exam is because he only wanted to talk about the blonde. The girl says that now she will ask the boy a very important question. She wonders if he will choose earth that tastes like tomato, or a tomato that tastes like earth, which slightly saddens and surprises Hans. The boy chooses earth flavored with tomato, and the brown-haired woman disqualifies him. He looks at her surprised, not understanding what is happening, and Lijun simply leaves. Her answer did not match Jane's answer, which means he doesn't know this about her, which is why the young man is disqualified. The blonde meets the girl and asks her who is outside, but she tells him she doesn't have a boyfriend. The girls discuss with interest who passed the accounting exam. Jane says that nothing matched what they taught. They talk about studying. The brown-haired girl is very worried about passing, but the blonde thinks there is no need to try so hard. Lee Jian is disappointed, which surprises and scares her interlocutor at the same time. She explains that it's not about grades, but that during the holidays, she will be bored because everyone is leaving. But she is staying at the academy. Jane says she will send letters to her roommate so they won't be bored. They both say goodbye quietly and prepare to continue with their affairs. The blonde cheers up the brunette every time she goes to the club lounge, even though she goes there to sleep. She thinks that she will finally be able to sleep well for the night, but she hears a strange dialogue outside the door. The voices belong to two club members. They were talking about each other's delays. Shouts are heard from behind the door. Lijan bites her lip with tension. She is debating whether to enter now before things get worse. The girl bursts into the room and at the same time apologizes for being late. Karshan receives her with open arms and invites her in. She looks surprised and asks, bewildered, why is Fjord on the ceiling? The redhead claims that he was a little tired, so he decided to take a nap. The brown-haired woman is confused by the fact that he is supposedly resting silently on the ceiling. But the young man replies that his friend is having a terrible dream, and that she shouldn't worry. Karshan takes the boy down from the ceiling and asks him if he slept well. The blonde tries to ask something, but the pink-haired girl interrupts him, asking him again if he slept well. The boy finally notices Lilian, and she says this is just to give him luck. Fjord and the girl are talking about being late due to the exam. She says she was trying to get a passing grade. The blonde said it was not too late to retake the exam. And Karshan added that everything was so easy that he didn't even have to count the points he got. She is surprised that it was easy for the pink-haired boy. Although in her opinion it was not so, Lajun realizes that Karshan is still a genius, for whom it is easier to teleport than to run, which requires not only extraordinary magical skills, but also a brilliant mind. The girl asks about Fjord's specialty and, upon learning that he is involved in fencing, she assumes that he should understand her. The blonde abruptly adds that they will be graded on his work on the exam, even if he doesn't write it down. And then the brown-haired girl realizes that out of the three, she is the one left in the cold. It's not that her grades were bad, but lately she had been very relaxed. Meanwhile, Carson was offering the girl sweets he took from the garden. Suddenly, Lee Young announces that she will not appear in the club for a while, as she failed her accounting exam. It was necessary to rescue other items. Fortunately, she got good grades in her basic classes, and she had everything else to catch up. The brown-haired woman offers to finally start the long and boring work. Karshan appears in front of her. He explains this by saying that he is also studying. But the girl notices that his textbook is upside down. The boy replies by saying that he can read upside down. So he doesn't care. He calmly begins to recite the text from the book, which gives the impression that the young man knows it by heart. Lijan realizes that he is looking at her, not the book, and he will never be able to study normally that way. Suddenly, the pink-haired one, approaching, asks her if she minds. She offers to teach the brown-haired girl if she doesn't know something, and then says she can ask anything. The girl agrees, at the same time realizing that he doesn't care about the rest of those around him. It seems that more and more people believe that they are dating. Some are not even ashamed to approach and ask about it, as if someone is deliberately spreading these rumors. The only question was who was doing it, and for what purpose. She even wondered if Karsian's parents wanted to meet her, the very girl who had charmed their son. The boy asks her what she is thinking about, and at this moment, she is only worried about the exams and those rumors. The brunette calmly replies that she doesn't care anymore, because looking into his face, she forgot about everything. The pink-haired one is very surprised by this turn of events. A slight blush appears on his face. He, hesitantly and smiling, asks if the girl likes his face. She replies that she was worried about some trifles, but thanks to the boy, she finally forgot about them. Meanwhile, something was happening in the mansion of the Duke of Lysiansky himself. A man informs the pink-haired woman about a rumor that has become the most talked about in the academy. The girl says it's very interesting that her son became interested in the opposite sex. It was the director of Arena Academy, Karshan's mother, Sylvia Lysianskaya, and also said that perhaps they would meet soon. Lilin, annoyed, calls the pink-haired man by his name, clearly trying to say something with just this word. Thanks to her intonation, he calmly says his name in response, smiling. After the girl announced that she would no longer appear in the club for a while, Carson literally started chasing her. He pointed out that this was a women's dormitory and, despite the fact that he didn't meet anyone on the way, his roommate was also in her room, whom the girl demanded an apology from. He smiled and looked first at the brown-haired girl, and then at her roommate. The boy apologized to Jane with a certain questioning intonation. The blonde girl, embarrassed, immediately replied that he should not apologize. Lijan says she doesn't have to be friendly with the boy. Both people were short-tempered, so they couldn't separate like that. And the brown-haired woman began to suspect that something was going on that she did not know about. She sighs in resignation, realizing that nothing can be done now. The girl gently touches the boy's hand, with the intention of doing something. He abruptly withdraws his hand, embarrassed, and the brown-haired woman only says that they must use teleportation to move to the club lounge undetected. The trembling boy says that the fact that his hand was on her shirt was something very sweet. She asks if it will be more difficult to move like this, to which the redhead replies negatively. Karshan warns that the girl herself asked about this as an exemption from responsibility. The young man, extending his hands towards her, grabs her, which greatly surprises Lilian. The boy wraps her in a very tight hug. Feeling some embarrassment, the brown-haired woman suggests that such dangerous magic requires closer contact. Karshan's heart starts beating wildly. He tries to focus on magic. The girl understood that this was the second time they hugged like this. The pink-haired one had his own, and incredibly persistent, and unique rose scent, which reminded her of the plant the boy recently gave her. The girl didn't even realize how she was suffocating in his arms, while Fjord looked surprised at the people who had already moved and were hugging. Startled, he asked them what they were doing. Hearing this, the brown-haired woman abruptly pushed the young man, who understood nothing, away from her. She explains that they needed to use the teleporter, and she had no idea it was so fast. The blonde only says that they should go out and kiss there because he studies here. But the girl is surprised that she needs to learn something. Then she approaches her sad comrade and asks him to come to his senses. Lilian watches how the boys are standing almost facing each other. Suddenly, the pink-haired girl turns around and slowly begins to walk away somewhere. The brown-haired woman asked Fjord what was wrong with him, and he just asked her not to pretend they were just friends before telling her that the boy had gone to take a cold shower. The girl didn't quite understand the blonde's explanation and asked why a cold shower was necessary. The boy suddenly falls silent, not knowing what to answer now. He nervously replies that the young man must have spilled something, because he is very clean, mentally thinking that it will be necessary to give Karshan a remedy for sweat. The blonde asks why a couple of minutes ago the brunette asked him what she needed to learn. She explains this by the fact that he never studied in the club lounge. He only read. Fjord says that he also tries to keep his grades high. But because of Karshan, a wrong impression was formed about him. And Lee Young says that she considered them geniuses, only in different fields. She notes that she has heard very little about Fjord, so she wonders how he will do on campus. He says he is in the top 5. But that's not so good. The girl doesn't quite understand, because fencing is the most popular specialty. She notices that he is good at pretending not to be bragging, and that his conversational skills are better than Karshan's. Lijun asks him to be careful not to be misunderstood, because there have been many rumors in the academy. He promises to try to make them understand him correctly. And she is also about to add that he and the pink-haired one are good people. But she stops abruptly. Suddenly, he asks the girl if she thinks Karshan is really good, to which she replies that he looks like a child. Fjord doesn't understand how the redhead would handle this information if he found out. Leon says she will sleep for a while, and then asks the boy to wake her up in 30 minutes. The young man looks at her surprised, and at the same time very attentively. He was surprised that the girl fell asleep instantly right after lying down. The blonde thought Karshan was acting like an idiot, and who would have known if she didn't notice? Maybe the point is that she is naive. Or maybe it's not just a matter of naivety. Sometimes tough, sometimes soft. Sometimes surprises with her intelligence. The blonde man concluded that Lillian is a very versatile person. And the more time passes, the more he learns and the more often he thinks about her character or facial expression. That's why the scoundrel Karshan was so into this, although Fjord couldn't blame him for it. And it became clear that the reason the redhead was hiding his character was because he wanted to impress Lillian. So he must be worried, since the girl is a warm soul. He is afraid to disappoint her if he shows the bad side of himself, and in the end only shows the good side. And Fjord understood his comrade because he himself tried to give a good impression. Suddenly, the brown-haired woman opens her eyes and looks directly at the boy. The blonde looks at her with fear, forcing a smile, and pretending that nothing happened. He asks her surprised why she isn't sleeping, but the girl replies that she will study first, and then she will simply sleep. She took the blonde by surprise, which made him feel embarrassed. He was restless in his soul. He partially covered his face with his hand, embarrassed The boy tried to console himself with the fact that she couldn't notice anything, because he was only looking at her in surprise. The last thing he wanted was for Lilian to like him. Fjord still, although it was difficult for him, admitted that the girl was very attractive. But the thing is that life taught him not to fall in love anymore, especially if it concerns the girl his friend is in love with. The brown-haired woman says she was almost asleep. But suddenly, she started thinking about why this creepy academy issues grades right before the holidays. This approach forces everyone to diligently prepare so as not to spend the holidays repeating, which was something terrible. She says she is happy to have received good grades in club activities and to be able to concentrate on the exams, something for which she thanked her friends. When she was checking the result, she saw the club name and now it was chasing her. But she decided it wasn't worth asking Fior. It turned out that the club was called Figaten, which made her wonder about the origin of the name. If Mugaten is short for Mosquito Torture Club, it turns out Figaten means Fjord Torture Club. All this was dangerous because the boy began to worry greatly about everything concerning the girl. And there was no time for jokes, because this was turning into a huge problem. The blonde decides to dispel the false impression Lilian has of himself. She, not understanding anything, asks him where he is going now. He says that he is actually not that sweet and kind as he seems, and that his behavior in public is different from usual. The boy sincerely hopes that. Upon learning about the real blonde, she decides to draw a line between them. The girl calmly replies that she knows, and that Fjord is not just an idiot. The young man is very surprised by the word she decided to choose for him. Lillian smiles and explains that in public he smiles as if wearing a mask. But in the club he is more relaxed, which makes her incredibly happy. He looks at her surprised, clearly did not expect to hear something like that before. His answer saddens her because when she smiles like this, it makes the young man expect something more. The boy denies the girl's words and decides to tell a short story about himself. It was a story about a little half-brother who appeared out of nowhere. As a child, he followed his new family. But his half-brother distrusted him, son of an honest man, and in the end, he was able to survive and move to the academy. This was an old trick when fighting for an inheritance. Fjord would have loved to have dinner in a warm family atmosphere, but all he could do was swallow his tears alone. The boy decided to do everything possible to reclaim his rightful place. His behavior at the academy is aimed at establishing connections, so he doesn't need sincerity. Only the result is important. This is his strength, the only thing he can do alone. Determined to use people to his advantage, he resigned himself to contempt. The blonde knew that it wouldn't be surprising if she avoided him in the future. Lijen sadly suggested out loud that it must be very difficult for the boy. She said that it is exhausting to constantly have to adapt to others. The boy sadly asks her if she bothered him because he uses people. The girl says that no one worries her, because Fjord is her friend. The blonde felt relief and shame at the same time for everything that was happening, realizing that it was inevitable. There is no point in resisting, because it is as natural as water flowing down a slope. The young man, embarrassed, thanked Lilian for her support and kind words. He asked for forgiveness and quickly ran away, announcing that he had work to do. The girl began to think that Karshan was good, because he even brought this fluffy sofa here, and a cozy blanket. And if Fjord is bad, then the question arises why he doesn't use the near future Duke of Lisiansky. Most likely, the blonde considers Karshan his true friend, although neither of them seems to understand this. Suddenly, the pink-haired man arrived, which disconcerted Lilian because she was going to pretend she was studying. She frowned and continued pretending to be deeply immersed in sleep. The young man begins his speech by saying that the school holidays will start after the exams. He explains that because of this, he doesn't know what he will do without her. Leon couldn't believe he revealed this while she was sleeping. And then she assumed she would have to continue pretending to be asleep. The boy says he almost goes crazy on weekends without her. Karshan hopes the school holidays never come. And then he asks if there is a spell to slow down time. The girl didn't understand what she should do in such an awkward situation. Suddenly, she throws off the blanket. And she realizes that friends cannot do that. She states that he can visit them. And he really becomes unbearable, since she will not leave the academy. The redhead is surprised to have been heard all this time, just like the words of his listener. The brunette excitedly asks if the young man is happy with this proposal. He gives a positive answer, and he is already planning to invite her for a walk around the city during the holidays. Suddenly, Lilin covers his mouth with the palm of her hand, not allowing him to finish the sentence. He just looks at her inquisitively, not understanding why she is suddenly doing this. The girl understood that if the young man invited her on a date, this would cross the concept of friends. Meanwhile, Fjord is standing somewhere in the academy hallway. Lost in his thoughts, he remembers how the brown-haired woman told him she was his friend. And yet, the boy admits that he finally lost to the girl. He wondered if she would continue communicating with Karshan, the same way she did with him if she knew his true self. But then he gives himself an answer if it's Lijin. Then she will accept. Still, if she couldn't accept the pink-haired boy, there was no way to know if Fjord would have a chance. Time passed and the exams ended. Although despite seeming rather quick, it lasted incredibly long. The brown-haired woman, going over all this out loud in her head. She surprised Jane, who didn't understand what was happening or who she was talking to. Then the bell rang, the school day ended, and the holidays began. Leon tries to help her neighbor pack all her things to go home. The blonde girl says she lives in the far south, which surprises the brown-haired girl. The blonde also says she will first head to the capital to see friends from her old job. She adds that before returning to the academy, she was a bridesmaid for an aristocrat. This information made Lilin realize that Jane was an aristocrat. The blonde woman says there is nothing wrong with that, because while everyone went there to make connections, her family only needed money. The brown-haired woman replies that it is good that she herself decided to earn money for her family. The blonde thanked her neighbor for such kind words. Suddenly, she wondered if she should tell her friend the whole truth now, that she was watching Lilin. And only thanks to this, she was able to return to the academy. That Carson originally tasked her with befriending her, that she feels guilty for being kind, and now regrets it. James abruptly addresses his neighbor by name, hoping to tell her the whole truth now. The blonde quickly falls silent, trying to gather some courage. The blonde began to try to squeeze out at least some word. From stress and obvious excitement, she grabs a piece of carpet in her hands. In the end, Jane gives up and realizes that she cannot utter words. The brown-haired woman is trying in every way to understand what her friend wanted to tell her. She thinks it's about the family, or something that worries her. But she quickly dismisses this last assumption. Suddenly, Lilin turns to the man sitting opposite him, trying to attract his attention to her, trying to show that she is close. The girl places her palm on the blonde's arms. The brown-haired woman says that she will not pressure her friend or try to extract information from her, but also adds that she should not be ashamed to discuss anything together. Jane, feeling real friendly support, cries with happiness. She calls her neighbor Linda, with which Lilin is proud to agree. The blonde girl promises that she will definitely write to her friend. The girl thanks her and wishes her a nice and happy holidays. And the brunette's lonely holidays begin. Because one after another, the students went home. She began to study medicinal herbs, which she had previously postponed out of respect for the academy. And Jane. In this way, she wanted to fill the void. But as soon as she started seriously researching, time flew by in the blink of an eye. And closing an eye, Lillian sat exhausted on the chair, feeling very tired and sleepy. Everyone would be surprised if they found out about the girl's activities. The brunette could imagine the reaction of each of her friends. She lay down on the table, dreaming of seeing her friends because she missed them very much. The girl decided to go for a walk, at the same time remembering that her parents' wedding anniversary was approaching. She went to her hometown, where she once lived, where she buried her parents. Apart from the annual festival, there are not many events here. And this is what makes the town so friendly and cozy. The brunette decided to spend the night and go for a walk, as this year the festival falls in the current season. She remembered that she always used to bring a jar of delicious fruit jam to her parents. And a nearby girl was shouting about Chinese lemon grass that she was unaware of. Suddenly, Lilin notices something in the distance that reminds her of something important. She sees flowers and decides to buy herself a bouquet of several. She was surprised and happy that the flower shop was still in the same place. Walking in the right direction, she accidentally notices something very bright. Realizing what was in front of her, she was terribly frightened and also felt obvious dissatisfaction. It was a huge diamond ring. Very expensive. Li Jian, still surprised, understands that it is difficult to pass and not notice. She sighs and tells herself that no one will buy this, and that even a flower would be more beautiful. The girl said this because she was not interested in the beauty of flowers, only in their medicinal properties. After which she noticed that Karshan began to frequently give her flowers. Her mom and dad also deserved a beautiful bouquet. But Lilin hadn't found anything suitable yet. She carefully selected each flower to create the perfect bouquet. With it, among the flowers she chose, she will tell them that she has many small joys in her life, including flowers. She ended up buying even more than she originally expected. Now she will be interested in something more than medicinal herbs. And this was the influence of the pink-haired boy. He always gives gifts that make her happy and not overwhelming. But if he brought that ring, something not very good would happen. The girl decided to put those thoughts aside so that she could relax at least a little. Still, no person with taste would buy something like this. She slowly passes by a man looking at this ring. Suddenly, he says that this decoration is really beautiful. Lillian was incredibly outraged that a stranger liked this. On the one hand, she shouldn't have cared at all that a stranger was buying it. On the other hand, if something terrible can be prevented from happening, then it must be done. The man seemed to like the color and the perfect size for his lover to be delighted. He realizes that he will be able to see her incredibly cheerful smile. The stranger is about to make a purchase when suddenly Lilan calls him. She says she can't believe he's going to buy a ring with such a big stone. He asks her why she cares, at the same time thinking that this girl does not look like an aristocrat's mercenary. The man then assumes that she is a resident of this town, while the brown-haired woman informs that he barely needs this ring. The stranger looks at her with disapproval, not understanding what she is trying to achieve. He couldn't just walk away just because the man's facial features reminded him of Karshan. Suddenly, Lijin has a brilliant idea while looking at her bouquet. She quickly starts taking out pink flowers. Upon finishing, she finds herself holding a small bouquet of beautiful flowers, and he assumes that she is an unusual girl. The brown-haired woman hands the stranger carefully collected plants, which greatly surprises him. He is not even in a hurry to accept them, when suddenly she simply pushes the bouquet towards him and tells him to take it calmly. Lillian says that this is an azalea, which in the language of flowers means the joy of love, and then asks for it instead of a ring. The man didn't understand why it was worth giving this particular flower. The girl bows and wishes him well, with the intention of leaving. Half a minute later, she finally leaves the stranger. He just looks mysteriously at the azalea, without paying further attention to the ring. A second person approaches him and informs him that they are waiting for him. A man asks his subordinate to buy everything in this jewelry store. He wants to add something else, but suddenly falls silent and turns in the other direction. The second asks him if he should get rid of these flowers, to which he refuses because it seems the bouquet was not poisoned or enchanted. Meanwhile, Sylvia, sitting in the carriage, enjoyed the noisy atmosphere. and cheerful outside. The woman remembered how he said he would only be gone for a minute. Suddenly, someone's masculine hands quietly opened the door. Slowly, the same man who wanted to buy that strange ring earlier enters. He, the father of the Leonian Duke of Lysian Karshan. He justified himself by saying that he wanted to give the pink-haired woman something to remember this festival. Sylvia, upon seeing the gift, couldn't believe what she was seeing, and was surprised at the same time, and even delighted. She sincerely thanked her husband for this wonderful gift. The pink-haired woman said she thought he had bought the whole shop again on a whim, or a jewel that couldn't be used. And that's why she boasted. And the bouquet of azaleas struck her with incredible force, making her feel sincere happiness. Leonian says she wants to give him these flowers, which mean the joy of love. The girl was madly moved by the fact that he also knew the language of flowers. The man concluded that he would have to thank that girl somehow. Sylvia says she was sad about her son's unrequited love, but the flowers lifted her spirits. The man says that it is unlikely that Karshan is in love, and she is mistaken. Rumors have already flooded the academy. The only thing they talk about is the girl Karshan is in love with. The mother remembered how her son asked her to supervise students who violated the rule about spreading information about his status, as well as harassing a student. Sylvia, as the director, took care of it, of course, making sure they were expelled. She asked her husband to guess who the girl was named after, and he immediately replied that it was the girl Karshan liked. The woman was incredibly happy that her son liked someone. But despite this, she felt sorry for Lilin, because her only advantage was her face. The man thought of something not very funny, after which he said that this was definitely a cause for concern. A few weeks later, a strange carriage appeared in front of the door, with a brown-haired woman standing in front of it. In front of her was a man who was an employee of the man who tried to buy a ring. He was trying to give the girl a letter. Lee John didn't quite understand who exactly sent this golden carriage. She immediately dismissed the possibility that any of her friends had sent it. The brown-haired woman really wanted to refuse, but the stranger asked her to look first, and then give her answer. Suddenly, a piece of paper, similar to a check, peeked out of the letter. In the letter, the girl sees a sum that has more and more zeros. In the end, she accepts the letter because she could not refuse such a sum. Be that as it may, she believed that this mysterious aristocrat had no reason to look for her. She began to read the messages, changing her facial expression to a slightly disgusted one. The brunette understands that, most likely, it was Leonian, this time asking for help in resolving a dispute between the spouses. Lysian was already lost due to the fact that she did not know her wife's preferences at all. But suddenly, a brilliant answer to the man's question came to her mind. She abruptly runs away, asking for time to write an answer. Already at the mansion of Duke Lysiansky, the girls hand the answer to Leonian. The man asks if this is really her answer, after which the employee briefly explains everything that happened. Leonian cryptically says that they need to prepare something now. Meanwhile, Lilian was thinking about what happened, and realized that, although the method was viable, the man was an aristocrat, so something like this could offend him. She decided that now it doesn't influence anything, so everything depends on the strength of love for his wife. In the letter, the girl wrote that he himself should prepare breakfast for his wife tomorrow morning, making sure to do it in a tight shirt and an apron. Sylvia, yawning, enters the kitchen and asks what that smell is. The man was dressed as necessary, a tight shirt and an apron. He called her and informed her that he had just made some toast. The pink-haired woman looks at him surprised, amazed at what is happening. She approaches him and at the same time tells him with admiration that he looks incredibly sexy. The man began to frequently write to Lilan to find out the next successful method. And the girl also received a letter from her roommate. She also received a letter from her aunt, which brought her darkness and some discontent. The aunt's letter said that the fact that the girl did not come for the holidays greatly upset them, because her uncle, Luca, and Erhin miss her. The brown-haired woman nervously crumples the letter, clearly experiencing aggression and disappointment. She remembered Erhin's silhouette, whose name was mentioned in the letter. For the girl, the news that the boy missed her sounded more than terrible. She tried to calm down somehow. Tears almost sprang from her eyes. Erhin is the aunt's eldest son, so it is logical that his name would appear in the letter at some point. The brown-haired woman saw Carson's letter, which could only make her happy. She thought the boy would return to the city in less than a week. But in the end, it lasted quite a long time, which was surprising. The letter said that he was dying of impatience, so he would come with the girl now. She didn't quite understand what this meant, and how she should react to this. Suddenly, a strange sound like a knock was heard nearby. Lijun immediately realized that this sound came from outside the window, and not from behind the door. She, not believing her guesses at all, runs quickly to the window. Suddenly, a pink-haired man appears out of nowhere and says it's a surprise. The girl, I don't have time to digest all the information I have in my head at once. She tries to say something. She abruptly shouts his name and tells him to be careful by hugging him. Carson tightly grabs his beloved, who lies on top of him. Lillian gets up and angrily asks why the guy is entering through the window. He, still lying on the floor, smiles, realizing that in front of him is a real brown-haired woman. The young man starts crying, and the girl, not knowing how to react, asks him not to be sad, after which she wonders if he hit himself. The pink-haired boy says he didn't hit himself, but that he is crying because he is happy. The girl, not feeling safe, still accepts her interlocutor's answer. She felt ashamed for not doing anything for him while he cried just from seeing her. She reports that if he were so unbearable, then he could just come to her. But Carson refutes this by saying that if he came too early, he would be bored during the holidays. Lillian allowed the young man to come one day because she didn't expect him to listen to her, and still couldn't believe he wasn't coming every day. Still, the boy restrained his communication, and the girl felt ashamed of herself. Both people sat in silence, sadly looking at unknown spots. Meanwhile, the pink-haired one was killed by the fact that after so long, he saw the embarrassed Lillian. When he finally saw her, tears appeared in his eyes. He even pretended to cry because she was embarrassed. The girl took care of the young man, which made him very happy. The brown-haired woman finally decides to somehow cheer up the boy. She comes up with an ideal idea, which she doesn't initiate with Carson himself at first. She calls her interlocutor with her, and they head to the shopping gallery next to the academy. The dangerous one was surprised to see the place they were being taken to. It was a photo studio, a place that was now popular at the academy. Lillian suggested celebrating with her boyfriend that he kept his promise. The young man happily agrees, without hesitation. After some time, Carson was already excitedly looking at the paper he received. It was a photo of them together, and smiling happily, which made the pink-haired boy go crazy with joy. The girl goes to give the money to one of the workers, but the boy says he will pay himself. The brown-haired woman is not happy about this, because she was the one who brought him here, especially since she recently got some money. That's why she made a decision on exactly how much she will pay now. The young man was more than surprised. He stared at his companion with his mouth open. This was dangerous because Carson almost fainted from so much happiness. Meanwhile, the boy was thinking that they should also take pictures at the wedding. Jane finally arrived at the academy. The roommates were happy to see each other. They missed each other a lot during all these holidays. Both walked down the street and commented on what the blonde woman wrote in her letter. She says she is happy to return to school because she missed all the fuss. Lillian learned from her roommate that a new transfer student had arrived. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the peace treaty with the Abascanthus Empire. And in honor of this, the Prince of the Ragres Empire came to study with them. And the Prince of the Second Empire arrived here. The empires exchanged princes. And now a man from Abascanthus will study at Arena Academy. The brunette didn't quite understand why she didn't know about all this. But her neighbor told her that it was because mentioning status was forbidden at the academy. Despite this, Li Jian understood that as long as the children of the aristocrats were connected with the outside world, rumors could not be stopped. Jane adds that she will start studying from the first day, along with everyone else, and that the academy will be restless again. They change the topic of conversation, thinking about what they will have for lunch today, assuming also that there will be potatoes. The girls are already sitting in the dining room and contemplating the delicious food in front of them. The blonde is surprised that her friend ordered the potato menu. She explains this by saying that she wanted potatoes after Jane herself mentioned them. Suddenly, the brunette notices Amila. Redhead, strangely enough, eating potatoes. Lillian wondered if they could be considered relatives. While Amila's friend noticed that her skin looked great lately. She asks her what her secret is, and if it's because of the potatoes. The redhead says that during the holidays, she bought special cosmetics for her care, which were not so easy to find. According to her, when applied, the cosmetics smell a little and irritate the skin, but the effect is noticeable almost immediately. So it's worth it. The woman sitting next to her begins to ask Amila the name of this cosmetic. The redhead says it is Barman Nerina, which horrifies Lillian. The brown-haired woman slowly gets up from the table, looking only at a vague spot. She seriously addresses Amila as if she were a fish to start a conversation. The redhead makes a guess about why she approached her, but it turns out to be incorrect. Lillian asks the potato to get rid of the cosmetics she started using. The fry's friend reproaches her for eavesdropping on their conversation, after which she adds that for them she is nobody, so there is no need to give orders. The brunette says that, although the effect will be visible immediately, if you continue to use it, the skin will suffer greatly. Amila does not believe her words and refutes it by saying that her skin looks great now, and her friend suggests having lunch somewhere else. They quietly leave without saying a word, leaving Lillian with her thoughts. Barman is a cosmetic that has excellent moisturizing properties, but it contains toxins that cannot be removed from the body, even if no noticeable problems arise at first. With constant use, a cumulative effect occurs that has fatal consequences. Soon production was banned, and distribution of these cosmetics. The side effects were so fatal because nothing helped, neither medicine nor healing magic. The only person who discovered the cause and was able to develop a cure was Lillian's mother. And this is why the girl couldn't stay away now. Jane slowly approaches her and asks her if she is okay. She says those girls are insolent, and then invites her to deal with them. The brunette couldn't just walk into the little one's room and throw everything away. At least she warned them. So time will tell. After a while, Li Jian walked through the beautiful academy garden, thinking her own thoughts. She thought she needed to make some medicine to help Amila if something happened. She regretted that the redhead simply didn't listen to her, because soon the magnificent potato would wither. She then decided not to think about it, because she came to the garden to calm down and relax. A stranger appeared in front of the brown-haired woman, walking straight towards her. To avoid bumping into him, Lillian steps aside. But the boy repeats this action after her, and again they walk straight towards each other. She politely tells the dark-haired boy to go first. The stranger smiles and asks her not to draw attention to him. He, looking at her with disgust, says that such tactics are unpleasant to him. The boy starts leaving the girl alone, who still doesn't understand what is happening. She supposed that the stranger was simply having a bad day for some reason. Li Yong told herself that she must persevere, and that if this was a test she had to pass, then she would pass it, because good things come to those who persevere. Suddenly, the brown-haired girl notices something not far from her, and this attracts all her attention. She shrieked, which unintentionally attracted the attention of the departing boy. The brown-haired woman looked with admiration at the plant, growing almost at her feet. She only noticed it because she stopped. So you have to think positively. The girl prepared to pick a flower. And she reached out her hand. The dark-haired one, upon turning around, notices this and looks at the girl in horror. He shouts, asking what she is doing, thus distracting Lilian from her planned activities. She replies inquisitively, not understanding at all what is happening. The boy says that he turned a blind eye to the fact that she blocked his way to attract his attention. But he could not overlook the fact that she was tearing off the color at will. He assumes that the girl considers the academy garden her property. Lilian looks at him indignantly, as if he were some kind of fool, not even knowing what to say. Normally, in the Ragras Empire, the fruits of the plants emerge from the sepals remaining after the petals fall. But here the flowers differ in that they must be broken. Bees are attracted by the smell of a flower, after pollination, whose petals open, also attracting animals. And the animals eat for the beneficial properties contained in the petals, after which the flowers wither, and the fruits grow near the roots of the plant. That is, people have to pick flowers in the garden. Now the girl needed parts of this plant. So she picked it, but this is no reason to judge a person you see for the first time. She couldn't explain well what was happening, because someone who judges a person without knowing the details is unlikely to listen. Lijin was about to start her story. But the boy says he doesn't want to hear her excuses. He tells her that she wouldn't act this way if she knew how much work went into this plant. But for her, it's just a flower. The dark-haired man. As he leaves, he says she won't get away with it a second time. Lijin is left alone on the street without having time to utter a word. She was horrified that they might still meet, because she didn't want to run into him anymore. Karshan, sitting in the club lounge, was happy that today he would finally see the real Lilian. Fjord enters the room simultaneously, announcing his arrival. The pink-haired woman says she thought a brown-haired woman was entering the room. The newcomer begins to be interested in what Karshan hid upon arrival, explaining that there is something there that cannot be seen. Fjord saw his comrade acting suspiciously. Curiosity grew with every second. The blonde asks if it really doesn't matter that the brunette wasn't even interested in girls before. But the pink-haired boy dodges the question again. The seated man realizes his friend is about to wear him down completely. The blonde asks if he is afraid Lilin will come in, and accuse him of hiding something from her. To which he receives the answer that he should shut up. Fjord notes that this is intense, that the young man is not going to give up. Suddenly, he reveals that the brown-haired woman won't be able to come today, which horrifies the seated person. Panicked, he begins to wonder what happened to her. The blonde says the brunette doesn't seem sick. But this uncertainty frightens the pink-haired boy. The blonde runs towards his friend to see what his friend ended up hiding. Karshan, reacting very quickly, confidently grabs the attacker's hand, throws the blonde onto the sofa with all his might, and the latter comes out defeated. The winner asks how he dares use his name. And Fjord lies and thinks he is a monster. The pink-haired boy suddenly changes his expression, clearly thinking about something for a second. He begins to mock the blonde, asking him if he really wants to look. Suddenly, a girl enters the room, announcing her arrival loudly. She looks surprised at the scene opening up before her, almost not knowing how to react to it. In front of her were both boys, positioned very strangely, not far from each other. Lilin asks if they have decided to change gender, and then suggests leaving them alone. But she is quickly interrupted, and says that it is not so. Some time later, the boys explain the whole situation to her, and she begins to try to solve it. The blonde says the second one's strange behavior is very difficult to tolerate. Karshan points out that if his friend wants to see something obscene, he should just look under the bed. Lilin takes this more as truth than a joke. After which, smiling, she looks at the now joint victim. Fjord quickly exclaims that there is absolutely nothing like that under his bed. The brown-haired woman, smiling at him, says that if he has something good, then it is worth sharing with his friends. He, sulking and grim, looks at the smiling girl opposite. She abruptly reveals that it was just a joke. But that the blonde didn't like it much. She sits on the sofa between the two of them and says she likes to watch how they react, before suggesting that what was hidden was a holiday photo. The blonde is surprised that they took a photo together. He loudly concludes with disgust that they saw each other and went for a walk during the holidays. But Karshan notices that he probably also spent the whole weekend with his female friends. The brunette is surprised by this information. But the blonde explains that he changes them often. But at the same time, he is not a womanizer. Lilio loudly notes that he seems to be trying to make excuses. She asks him if he will get into trouble if he continues doing this to girls in love. He replies by saying that he broke up with the latter before the holidays, and that now he will not enter into unnecessary relationships. The brown-haired woman looks at him surprised, and the pink-haired man looks at the wall with disgust. Unexpectedly, Lee Jian suggests taking a photo of the three of them together so they stop arguing and record the blonde's decision. Fjord asks her if she also means him, to which he agrees. He smiles satisfied at her, clearly pleased with the information he heard. Blonde begins to mock Karshan's discontent, telling him that taking a picture together is a great idea. Meanwhile, the pink-haired boy has already developed a plan, where the first three take photos together. Then he crops out his comrade from there, and then takes out a copy of him. Having formulated this plan in his head, he immediately cheered up and agreed with Lillian's idea. The brown-haired woman said that, when they all grow up, they will have memories in the photo. She promises it will be fun, and also suggests that the three of them take photos sometimes. The girl also added that her hands were already itching with impatience. Suddenly, Lillian realizes that they gathered together for the first time after the holidays. But after chatting for a few minutes, it seems like they see each other every day. Both boys also notice this after their accomplice's words. This surprises them. The brunette concludes by saying that they should get together like this more often. Suddenly, the voice of Professor Walter is heard outside the door, asking if Lillian is inside. A feeling of dread overwhelmed the girl. She was scared by the fact that the professor personally came to her. Professor Walter is, in general, a pretty good teacher. He just gives the impression of a tired office plankton. He doesn't neglect his students, but he also doesn't turn to them when he needs to call someone. The girl opens the door for him and asks what's wrong, to which he replies that he has a request for her. After which he asks for a couple of minutes. She confidently says she can, and he asks her, just in case, if this is the answer to his request. What is suspicious is that he didn't even explain what the point was, but he wants her to agree immediately. The professor sadly informs them that they must first go to the teacher's lounge. Lillian says goodbye to her friends before leaving and asks them not to fight. Already seated in the teacher's lounge, the girl looks at the person opposite with disgust. In front of her was the dark-haired boy she had recently met. The professor explains that this is his friend who recently transferred to this academy. Walter whispers quietly to Lillian that she, as a recently transferred student, should also know what to pay attention to. He asks her to take him to places she knows herself. They say it is very difficult for the boy. The professor is about to leave, and finally tells her to show him everything, and that it is urgent. The girl grabs him by the robe and hugs him, asking him not to leave them like this. She explains that helping the transferred student is important, and that she has work to do. The teacher says she needs to read her students' letters, hoping that now she understands how much work she has. Walter asks her to help him at least a little, and tells her that, if she doesn't like it, she can turn around and leave. As a result, Li Jiang agrees. The professor rejoices and flies out of the teacher's lounge like a bullet. The girl didn't even know he could move his feet so fast in such situations. Both people stand close to each other without saying a word. The brown-haired woman abruptly asks for a name, but the young man doesn't quite understand what is being demanded of him. She asks him what his name is, after which she finds out that his name is Kun. Lee Jong points out that he is not giving his last name. After all, Jane was right. They were forbidden to mention their status. The girl pieces together a small puzzle in her head, after which she realizes that his full name is Kun Edgar Abascantis. She starts by asking if it really is his first day here. But without waiting for an answer, she continues. The brown-haired woman says that if he doesn't understand something, then there is no need for him to ask her questions. She smiles kindly and adds that she wants him to learn to manage on his own. Kun opens his mouth in surprise, clearly not expecting to hear such a greeting. The girl explains that she is not a maid to give him a tour, that when she was transferred, they didn't offer her any of that. She confidently declares that she will not play along. Then, without waiting for any response, she says goodbye and turning around begins to leave. He abruptly turns back to her to prevent her from leaving and asks her to wait. The boy grabbed Lillian's handkerchief hand. She didn't quite understand when he managed to grab it. The young man, repeating her words, says that she is not just any maid. He explains that this is the academy's position because he personally asked the professor about it. Kun says he doesn't want special treatment, after which he apologizes for this incident. No matter what she said, Lillian was not going to forgive him because she was very angry. The girl says with a smile that in this case, everything was just her imagination, including the handkerchief with which she took his hand. She assumed he didn't intend to discriminate against her. The young man withdraws his hand, trying to find something to justify himself. He explains all this by saying that he supposedly has some circumstances. The boy notices that she doesn't intend to hide her feelings. But Lillian replies that she is not going to be hypocritical, suggesting that she still expects special treatment. The dark-haired man admits that their first meeting was not very successful, but that for now they should tolerate each other. He says that he also wouldn't like to be in the company of someone who harms nature, but that it is a necessary measure. The boy promises that he too will accept her presence. The brown-haired woman doesn't understand if her interlocutor can speak normally, nor realizing if this is a call for a truce or a fight. The young man asks her what she thinks of his proposal. Lijin forces a smile and claps theatrically once. She says that it will be difficult for her to walk so much because her shoulders hurt from constantly picking flowers, and then adds that he should manage on his own. After these words, she flees so quickly that she seems to evaporate. Rumors said that Prince Abascantis was sick, but the brown-haired woman didn't see him as a sick person at all. And this was the reason why rumors were often not worth trusting. Kun is left alone in the teacher's lounge, stunned by what is happening. He frowns and thoughtfully looks at his handkerchief, with which he previously grabbed the girl's hand. The boy has no idea what kind of feelings he was supposed to experience after such a strange dialogue. He suddenly realizes that he doesn't even know the name of the person he was talking to a couple of minutes ago. The young man considers the brown-haired woman's action impudent, after which he thinks that he no longer wants to cross paths with her. The next day, the girl had a joint lesson with that new boy. Professor Walter was their homeroom teacher, so it's not surprising that the transfer student ended up with them. Jane asks if her neighbor is okay, but she replies that she is fine, only that she has a slight headache. The blonde girl realizes that Lillian is quite popular, which the girl is not happy about at all. Last night, she told Jane what had happened because she needed to talk about it, and her neighbor was the best person to do so. One says that the boy is quite handsome, but the second replies that he only showed his face, but that otherwise he was terrible. Lillian says it's unlikely that there's another good boy like Carson somewhere. Suddenly, someone approaches the girls and apologizes for interrupting the dialogue. It was Kun quickly asking to talk about something with the brown-haired girl. Jane looked at him evaluatively, showing with her whole appearance that she was not happy with his request. The dark-haired man thought that all Ragra's ladies had this disposition, which disconcerted him. The brown-haired woman says that, if he has something to say, he should say it. Kun was about to speak when the pink-haired boy blocked him. He shares that he was at the store yesterday and remembered the girl. In the end, it turned out that, while thinking of his beloved, he bought a sea of wonderful sweets. The brunette, embarrassed, only asked why there were so many. The blonde says it's time for something sweet. That all this was very timely. Lillian thanks him and then promises to invite him to dinner somewhere nice. Initially, the received information does not fully reach the young man. Then, digesting the words she said, he realizes that this is a real date. He asks her if she can promise it, to which he confidently agrees. The brown-haired woman holds out her little finger, which means a promise. He, dangerous, moved by what is happening, looks surprised at the hand being offered to him. He also extends his little finger, and they connect, creating an unbreakable promise. Jane and Kun stand aside sadly, not interfering with their friends radiant with happiness. Suddenly, Karsian decides to change the topic to something more interesting to him. He, almost addressing Kun as if he were a dog, asks him if the boy is his new classmate. The girl, not suspecting anything, agrees and then rejoices at the caramel popcorn she received. Leon decides to share popcorn with her friend, but is rejected. The dark-haired man pierces Karsian's back with his dark gaze. The pink-haired boy turns furiously, trying to find out what the boy wanted from his lover. Kun looks at him sadly, not understanding why this matters to him. Classmates are very afraid of Karsian, and here they saw a photo in which a newcomer tried to talk to him. The brunette asks her friend if she understands anything, but receives a negative answer. The blonde, looking at the pink-haired boy, began to sink into her thoughts. She regularly informed him about Lillian's interests, but not about something as personal as her morals. Besides, she had only found out yesterday about the brown-haired girl's problems with the prince of a Bascantis. So there was no way Karsian could have known. However, he brought his beloved sweets right when Kun decided to annoy her. Jane didn't understand how the pink-haired man could sense Lillian's mood and worry about her when there were rumors of her cruelty and indifference. Jane thought she had misunderstood everything, so she decided to observe what was happening. Karsian seemed about to send the prince of a Bascantis back to his homeland. Kun says that if the boy finished, then let him leave, but the redhead says he does what he wants. He asks why the young man is here, and the dark-haired one says that he studies in this class. Having heard the answer, Lysiansky invites his interlocutor to return to where he should be. Kun realizes that Karsian knows his status, but still continues to behave this way. Lijin, meanwhile, eats popcorn, thinking how nice it would be if they returned to their places. The redhead apologizes to the girl, telling her that he will finish everything now. He approaches the prince and gives him a pat on the shoulder. He kicks him out of here. Karsian mockingly asks if the boy needs to bring a chair to sit down. The dark-haired man abruptly pushes the hand of the man next to him away. He looks at him threateningly and tells him that he had better bring this chair. Everyone in the office was horrified when they saw that Kun had let go of the hand of such a revered person in the academy. Karsian smiles at the person in front of him, holding his upturned hand in the air. The prince tells him to be more careful in the future, and as if wanting to add something more. But he didn't have that chance anymore. The pink-haired boy furiously attacks the new boy, starting a fight. He replies to Kun's comment by saying that he should be more careful. Karsian claims that there are no walls or knights protecting the young prince. The brunette was surprised that the pink-haired boy was creating trouble. Like any other boy, she remembers how he suddenly pushed the second one, almost hitting him in the face. Jane understood that he wasn't the type to openly create problems unless he had an ace up his sleeve. Lysiansky again smiles kindly at the man in front of him. Kun began to doubt that the boy knew his true status. He, the crown prince of the empire, could not silently tolerate such impudence from supposedly unknown people. The dark-haired one asks the young man to stop because he didn't need trouble. He leaves, announcing that this is where they end this fight. The boy calmly leaves the office. and slightly hurried, leaving everyone alone. Jane sat, shying away from such an unpleasant atmosphere around her. Fortunately, after that everyone took their seats. And the lesson began, but the brown-haired girl still couldn't concentrate on the lesson. She still hoped there wouldn't be any more shocks today. Hans runs up to her and informs her that this semester, there is another group assignment for medical botany. Leon, annoyed, asks him if she has to tell him about this right now. Hans made friends with many of those who study medical botany, so there shouldn't have been any problem. And the girl was also in such a situation that she had to wait for those who were falling behind. And although last time she somehow managed, this time she is a new trial. Suddenly the boy says he wants to be in the same group as her. The brunette wonders why, also mentioning that he can do the assignment with his friends. The young man said he needed to choose one person, and that she was the best candidate. Lijan immediately understood everything with this person when she heard these words. She remembered the moment when he personally removed her name from the group, and still decided to agree. Hans wonders if this semester will be assigned to drug development. The brown-haired girl says that this is unlikely to happen, since Professor George knows the level of knowledge of his students, and it is unlikely that he expects anything supernatural from them. The girl talks about her personal recipe, which surprises the young man. She shares that she has been studying medical botany since childhood, so she has many useful notes. Unexpectedly, Hans says that harvesting the fruits of other people's labor is unfair. Li Young starts laughing, but the boy doesn't understand the reason for her laughter. The girl asks him if he imagined it, or if he wants to take advantage of her, to which he receives a not very precise answer. Carl Sion appears out of nowhere, cheerfully shouting the brown-haired girl's name. It turned out that the pink-haired boy had already finished his classes and decided to visit the girl because, as it seemed to him, she had also finished her classes. Hans was shocked by the arrival of Lysiansky himself and became convinced of the truth of the rumors. Karshan apologizes to the girl for what happened before the lesson, but she is not angry with him. The young man thanks her for her forgiveness, feeling true happiness. Suddenly, he asks the brown-haired woman who the person next to her is. Lillian introduces Hans to her friend and explains that they have a medical botany class together. The redhead asks the woman opposite if Hans bothers her as much as he does. The boy, looking angrily at his competitor, reminds the girl that if she asks, he can always make sure not to bother her anymore. Lilan reports that the young man is her friend and seems to be very kind. Karshan tenses up at the brown-haired woman's words. He starts getting even angrier, but she also mentions that she has someone she likes. The redhead initially does not believe the words told to her, after which he still admits that option, but says that everything can change at any moment. Hans quickly refutes this, saying that he has different tastes, and that he likes Jane more than his companion Lee John. Suddenly, a blonde woman appears around the corner, looking curiously at what is happening. The whole panorama opens up before her, causing some confusion and surprise. The brunette is amazed by the young man's words. She looks curiously at his face burning with shame. Jane suddenly approaches her friend and asks her to go to the ballroom to attend a dance class. Lilan talks about how there are many changes this semester, and then tells Karshan that they will meet later in the clubroom. The blonde, upon leaving, turns around and says she doesn't want to meet strangers. Hans, stunned by these words, stands there like a dead man, realizing that this is a failure. And the redhead calmly attends to his own business. The boy is surprised by the fact that he didn't even have time to admit it directly, and he was already turned off. Dancing is the basis of social life culture, and the academy makes no distinction between commoners and aristocrats, so everyone studies the same thing. And since this only happened in pairs, and not alone, Lillian felt that this semester would turn into a group social hell. The brown-haired woman would like to dance with her friend, but she was afraid of taking away her chance. A female teacher approaches a seated girl and asks her if she has a partner. The teacher apologizes to them, but also advises them not to worry, because they had the same number of boys as girls. The woman calls the boy so that he and the brown-haired woman are partners, while the girl is already dreaming of finishing. The teacher begins to introduce the students to each other so that they can successfully partner up. A dissatisfied Kun appears in front of Lilin, and meanwhile, the teacher asks them to greet each other. The girl is annoyed that the young man is deformed again, and he doesn't even try to hide his hostility. The woman abruptly announces to the whole team that today they will learn the basics that do not require a partner's participation. She adds that next time everyone will dance in pairs, so everyone should have a flower as a gift for their partner. And to conclude, the teacher also asks them to pay attention to the fact that the meaning of the plant must be appropriate. After these words, the brunette remembers how Kun reacted sharply when she picked a flower. But she didn't tell the teacher anything. An evil smile suddenly appears on Lilin's face, clearly boding no good. She remembers a flower that would be perfect for a dark-haired man. In Karshan and Fjord's class, the teacher announced that they would go to the ballroom in the next period. The blonde says they are lucky that the dance teacher assigns partners herself, because there are fewer problems that way. The blonde also notices that Lee Jian's last dance lesson was practicing individual moves in front of her partner. Suddenly, Karshan, who is almost falling asleep from boredom earlier, stops and, as if waking up, looks forward with wide eyes from surprise. It is at this moment that he realizes that his beloved also has a dance partner. Fjord watches indignantly what happens, and he has no idea what to do about it. He asks his friend to calm down, because Lilin is only late because she went to the mountains. The pink-haired boy starts getting even more nervous, assuming that she went to buy flowers for her dance partner. The young man gets furious, realizing that these flowers might not be for just one person. A familiar female voice is heard announcing her arrival, which lifts the spirits of a man who was sad a few seconds ago. A brown-haired woman enters, slightly out of breath, greeting her friends. The pink-haired one realizes that the brown-haired girl is cute in any form, and the blonde, indignant, realizes that he can almost hear his comrade's thoughts. Carson asks her why she went to the mountains, because if she needed herbs, he would have helped her, after which he discovers that she still went to buy flowers. The boy looks at her dumbfounded and realizes that his assumptions were correct. Li Jian invites the young man to look at the plants she recently picked, and what he sees really surprises the boy. The next day, the dance teacher asks everyone to stand opposite each other. She encourages everyone present to start exchanging flowers among their partners. The brunette, with some mockery, asks Kun if he brought the correct plant. He says he did, just like the girl opposite him. The boy hands her a flower and informs her that he chose a flower that suits her. Lijun is surprised and amused by the fact that the dark-haired man also picks plants. She looks closely at the object handed to her, and a smile appears on her face. Kun starts talking about the flower, but the girl interrupts him by saying that she already knows without him. A yellow rose is not usually given to a dance partner because it means envy and jealousy. It was a special variety of yellow rose from a bascanthus, which means rejection, and it was called an umbrella. And all this even hinted at a certain vulgarity. The dark-haired man looks at the brown-haired woman with surprise, clearly not expecting such an outcome of events. Lillian accepts the flower, as well as the boy's rejection. Hidden in the meaning of the plant, it is the girl's turn, and suddenly she pulls out the prepared gift from behind her back. The young man casually takes the flower in his hands, and an unknown noise is heard. He looks at his palm with disgust and sees the root of the plant there. Lillian happily says that this is a seasnick. With a bright smile on her face, Kun looks at her bewildered, not quite understanding what she means. The brown-haired woman says that, since the young man doesn't like her picking flowers, she tore it off so that she could replant the plant after lessons. The dark-haired man looks at the gift with some disdain, realizing that it is common grass. And weed. Suddenly, he barely notices many tiny flowers, which proves that this is not grass, but a flower. The prince is defeated in this never-before-discussed battle. The teacher says that after the exchange, they need to start practicing. And they will start with greetings. The brown-haired woman decides to go all the way, after which she makes a careful bow. Next, Kun had to extend his hand to invite his partner to dance. Instead, he looks down, bewildered, taking no action. Lillian decides to check if her partner is really refusing to dance. Suddenly, she gently extends her hand towards him, with the palm facing up. The girl confidently invites the prince to dance and calls him gentleman. The dark-haired man reports that he does not want to do this, while according to the teacher's plan, the brunette should have already placed her palm on the offered hand and placed the other on his partner's shoulder. The brown-haired woman looks at him angrily, dissatisfied with the fact that he is ruining her mark. She abruptly extends her hand in his direction, with the intention of doing something bad. Lillian, without asking for his consent, she places herself in the desired position, placing one hand over his shoulder and placing the other in his palm. The young man looks at his palm in a state of shock, clearly unhappy with what is happening. Suddenly, he realizes or becomes aware of something. His expression suddenly becomes terribly grim. Suddenly, the prince strikes his partner's hand, thus pushing her away. Everyone turns around surprised by the sound of the impact, trying to understand what is happening. The brown-haired woman, squinting her eyes, she says quietly that it was quite painful. Kun, trembling, sweating, and panicked, he asks for forgiveness for what happened. The boy turns in the opposite direction from the girl, clearly about to leave. Lijin finds the sensation strange that she felt when he wrapped his arm around her neck. The teacher, turning to the girl, tells her that he will speak with Kun separately. Suddenly, a man emerges from the crowd and offers the teacher to be Lijin's partner for a while, and receives approval. The brown-haired woman is immersed in her thoughts, so she doesn't even notice that this boy is greeting her. She responds to his voice and quickly greets him by getting straight to the point. The young man introduces himself as Simon, after which he asks the girl to look after him. He smiles kindly at her, while Lillian looks at him surprised. She asks him in return to look after her, after which she realizes that one of her classmates has the same name, but doubts that he has exactly that appearance. Simon carefully extends the palm of his hand towards his new partner and sits on his lap, despite the teacher's permission. The boy asks if he can invite the girl to dance. The brown-haired woman realizes that this stranger's smile is painfully familiar to her. The teacher hastily turns on the music, and every couple begins their dance. Lijin notices that the young man's hand is not touching her waist, and also trembles violently. She also saw that his fingertips were very tense, although it shouldn't be like that. She looked at the expression on his face, and she could practically hear his heartbeat. The girl saw a completely different person in him, not the one who was now in front of her. This other man was a pink-haired man who bore an amazing resemblance to Simon. In fact, it was Karshan who had come here just to observe. But in the end, he was now dancing with his beloved. At the same time, Fjord tries to approach his comrade. But then he realizes that it is not a person, but simply an illusion. Lillian apologizes and says she doesn't know anything about the boy. But in response, they tell her that everything is fine. She thanks the stranger, to whom she immediately receives mutual gratitude. While the girl doesn't look, Simon uses his magic on the opposite hand from the standing person. He reports that he was happy to dance with her, and that he looks forward to future classes. The brown-haired woman suddenly realizes that her hand no longer hurts, and that the mark from the blow has disappeared somewhere. The teacher praises her students and asks them to return to their initial positions so she can teach them dance etiquette. The girl says that they are done for today, and Simon was about to say something, but she interrupts him and leaves. She considered the fact that during a conversation with the young man, he constantly remembered Carson as a strong attachment, Lillian looks at the struck hand and is surprised how quickly it healed. She decides not to think about it and finally start writing letters. The first letter was associated with a man who constantly asks the girl to help him with his marriage. The brunette concluded that he used the apron technique. And breakfast, which is why he writes to her regularly. She couldn't believe he was an aristocratic noble. But she noticed that he was a good husband. Suddenly, the girl gets the idea to ask the man if he has a child. The brown-haired woman's own aunt was directly related to the second letter. She was glad to be able to talk to her relative. But Irahant's letters already occupied an entire box. Lijin couldn't stand the smell of her stinking lavender. But since she was at the academy now, she wouldn't see him very soon. After her studies, she had to return to her aunt. Or become independent. The brown-haired woman's family budget was spent on treating her parents. So she had no inheritance. And she couldn't ask her aunt for money. She could use herbs to earn money. But she couldn't enter the market without capital. Connections and only knowledge needed a reliable partner. As a result, Li Jian concluded that there was no point in thinking about it now. There was another problem, and the cumulative effect of Barman Nearing's cosmetics should have appeared by now. She decided not to bother, but to make medicine. Because that was what she did best. The brunette didn't know if they would listen to her. But she, as a botanical doctor who has a solution, could not leave everything as it was. In addition to this, there was one more person she could help. She had a hunch based on the strange feeling she felt when she put her hand around his neck, as well as Kun's reaction itself. The girl didn't know what to do because, even if she apologized, nothing would change. If she bows her head and asks for forgiveness, it wouldn't help him. Several days passed since that moment, and nothing seemed to change at the academy. Amila was sitting in the middle of the first aid station, almost huddled in a corner. When she woke up, her face was burning. And then the redness appeared. She couldn't feel her own face. And she feared that things would not return to normal. Suddenly, the redhead remembers something. So she draws certain conclusions on her own. That day in the cafeteria, if she had listened to Lilan, everything would have been normal. The girl couldn't ask the brown-haired woman for help, because otherwise her pride would be offended. She realized that if Lilan was right, soon her face would turn into something terrible. Suddenly strange sounds are heard in the first aid station. And Amila falls silent. Someone calls a talking potato. And the redhead scares this person away, telling him that she doesn't want to see anyone right now. The girl suddenly realizes that only one person calls her a talking potato. From behind the curtain, someone pulls out a container without looking so as not to disturb the girl. Amila looks at the object with surprise, not quite understanding what it is for. Almost out of nowhere, the brunette explains that this is a Varmonknirina medicine, and that if you apply it, everything will disappear in a few days. The uninvited guest begins to leave, announcing that the choice is up to the talking potato itself. The redhead, crying, falls silent and looks at the container presented to her. She hesitantly reaches out to take the object. Suddenly, Lillian appears again and asks her to invite her to dinner at least once. Amila seems scared, this time like a girl who is leaving. Even though the redhead treated her that way, she prepared medicine for her, which was incredibly sweet. The day Lillian gave the medicine to the talking potato, something else happened on the way to the club after class. In front of the stunned girl, Kun lay unconscious on the floor. She simply saw a mosquito on the boy's back and crushed it without thinking twice. Karshan, who approached behind him, admired the fact that the brown-haired girl took care of the bad boy herself. In fact, she simply hit the young man harder to kill the mosquito. And Kun fell, and the pink-haired boy had to carry him to the club room. Fjord asks why the dark-haired man is here. And Li John explains that he didn't want to go to the infirmary. The girl realizes that the young man has a fever and, apparently, heat stroke, which is why his body needs to be cooled down. Water jug and the brown-haired woman, noticing this, says she will bring everything now. Karshan, interfering in their dialogue, says that if water is needed, He will cast a spell. Fjord is annoyed by this sudden help, despite understanding that the boy wants to help his beloved. The brown-haired woman, pointing to the jug, says that it needs to be filled with clean water. The pink-haired boy uses magic, and an entire lake of water pours over Kun. The patient, soaked from head to toe, immediately wakes up and tries to clear his throat. Karshan, smiling, says that he hasn't practiced for so long that he made a small mistake. Lilian understands that a genius who can teleport could not have made a mistake in the basics of magic. So the boy shamelessly lied to her. The dark-haired man states that he is fine. On the contrary, it helped him cheer up. The girl says that a patient is a patient, and she was the one who brought the boy here, and not to the medical center, so if he gets sick, she will have trouble. The brown-haired woman, having become serious, she turns to the pink-haired one and informs him that his actions were inappropriate now. Karshan looks at her in shock, unable to form words. Leon, turning to Kun, suggests that he dry himself first, to which the boy replies that he can manage himself. The dark-haired man says a strange word out loud, and his palm begins to absorb all the surrounding water. The girl, observing what is happening, immediately realizes that the young man is an elementalist. She asks him about this to confirm her words, and her guesses turn out to be correct. Kun is a wind elementalist. Elementalism requires different skills from normal magic. The boy thanks the brown-haired woman for her help and tells her that he was worried that she would leave him like that, after which he finds out that she initially wanted to do it. He also apologizes for hitting the girl a couple of days ago and talks about having problems with his hands. Lijun immediately guesses that he has partial hyperhidrosis. She receives confirmation, after which she learns that his body barely sweats, except for his hands, and that in summer he cannot regulate his body temperature and, therefore, he often faints due to heat stroke. The girl realized that the boy has partial anhidrosis. And hyperhidrosis, he cannot sweat, but sweats excessively. Despite the summer, his neck was suspiciously dry that day, and his hands wet. The young man admitted that he had encountered this many times, so he didn't want to bring the medical center any trouble and worry his family. The brown-haired woman notes that this clarifies the rumor about the illness of the second prince of Abascantis, and confirms it. Suddenly, Kun realizes that Lilin knew about his condition the whole time, so he was very surprised. And the girl said that everyone already knew. Fjord explains that rumors about the dark-haired boy's identity have been circulating since day one. All this time, the prince thought he had blended in with the crowd and tried to address everyone with respect. But the brown-haired woman found this address terribly strange. Kun apologizes to the girl for initially having a false impression of her. Li Yon understood that the boy had come to a foreign land, so his reaction was completely justified and, moreover, he had to fight his own body. She, frowning with some anxiety, remembers her baby bottle. The prepared inhibitors-based medicines can correct his hyperhidrosis and anhidrosis in the shortest possible time. She realizes that she has softened right after an apology, and also understands that the prince will have to pay exorbitant prices for the medicine. Kun is about to leave, and the girl asks him to come to the club tomorrow at this time. He doesn't quite understand what the need is, but she asks him to come and says goodbye. The dark-haired man realizes that it is really not easy with the brown-haired girl, and he is eager to learn more about her. The guy left, but there was still one problem, and it was Karshan. Meanwhile, Fjord had already headed to his table, not wanting to contact his friend in such a state. The girl approaches him and calls him by name, trying to do something. The pink-haired boy claims that he is trash, and that he does not deserve to exist in this world, which scares the brunette. Lijun, trying to calm him down somehow, will notice that she will not hate him for a few small things. The boy could not control himself because of her words, and hated him. The girl apologizes to him and tells him not to give too much importance to his words. Karshan, crying, apologizes because due to his jealousy, she constantly gets into trouble, not imagining what will happen. After this, he will hate him. The guy buries himself in his knees and silently keeps crying. And sad, the brown-haired woman is afraid of making things worse, not even knowing what to say to cheer him up. She remembers a childhood memory where her dad tells her that when her mom was angry, the same dad did everything to make her feel better. And when dad was already angry, then mom just needed a trick. He says you need a quick kiss, and this can improve your mood immediately. Little Lilan says surprisingly that a kiss is her mother's magic. She declares that she will also kiss the ducks at her house and the flowers in her garden. And this statement even applies to the forehead of the fluffy pink kitten. The girl, moving closer, unexpectedly kisses Carson on the forehead. Without thinking about the consequences, the boy looks surprisingly at the woman sitting opposite. Blushing, she looks at him in shock, covering her mouth with her hands as she realizes what she just did. She realizes that with her actions, she just crossed the line. Fjord looks at Carson and tells him to finally wash up and wash his face. The pink-haired boy says happily that he doesn't want to do this because Lillian kissed his face. It's been like this since yesterday. The blonde understood that it was better to abandon the idea of persuading him to wash. The blonde man says that in this case, he could show the brown-haired woman his dirty face. Carson suddenly pays attention to his friend's words. Fjord mentally begs him not to worry, and that he should just wash. The pink-haired boy asks his friend what else he has besides his face. The blonde says he doesn't know because it's not his face at all. Finally, Carson decides to go wash, increasingly irritating the blonde. The boy, with a wide smile, bombards his beloved with a cloud of questions. She waited until the last moment that the boy forgot everything. But this did not happen. The girl remembered that everything was because of the spilled water. But she was worried and couldn't sleep. She had no answers, so she didn't know the best way to react to this. She asks the young man if he knows that yesterday doesn't matter much, and receives confirmation. After this, she asks him if he understands that her actions were a mistake, and again receives confirmation. To conclude, she begs him to forget everything that happened. The boy, smiling provocatively, says that he will not do this, so he will never forget it. Then, smiling, he loudly regrets washing his face this morning. The girl desperately wanted someone to enter the room and give her the opportunity to talk about something else. Kun unexpectedly enters and asks permission to come in. She hurries to ask him to come in and realizes that for the first time, the young man is useful to her. The dark-haired man asks if he was on the way, to which he receives a negative. Kun sees the pink-haired boy looking at him mockingly and hypocritically, after which his mood suddenly deteriorates. Leon puts her hand in her bag and says that the required item is there. Taking it out, she reports that she wanted to give the boy what she had in her hands. The brown-haired woman says that this is a cure for the prince's illness. That is hyperhidrosis. She asks him to apply the medicine to his hands once every 3 days. And when the sweating subsides, that he should reduce it to once every 2 weeks, and then to once a month. The young man, fearful, asks her to stop, trying to digest the information received. He asks her if she wants to tell him that his illness can be cured, and receives an affirmative answer. The girl says that the sweat from his palms will simply redistribute throughout his body and, under certain conditions, the sweat will eventually be released elsewhere. She adds that this does not mean that sweat cannot be released anywhere else. The man just needs to induce it artificially, and then the whole body will sweat evenly. Kun says that it is not as easy as it seems, and Leon asks him if he believes her. The brown-haired woman asks the young man if he needs this bottle in order to hear the final answer. She answers her own question and tells him that he needs it, and that she will not give it away for nothing, and then asks him if he believes her. The dark-haired man looks at the floor, disconcerted, trying to focus on his thoughts. Since childhood, he was surrounded by doctors and scientists looking for a cure. But none of them could cure him. Those who tried with conviction, those who boasted of their knowledge, ended up being expelled from the castle. So the young man gave up, because he realized that there was no point in having hope. But for some reason, he now wanted to believe the brown-haired woman. He says that he is taking the medicine, and then asks her to give him the vial. Lijun hands him the item, and at the same time, informs him that she has only prepared a small bottle, after which she asks him to come back when the product runs out. The boy thanks her and says he hopes it works, and Karshan mutters that since the brown-haired woman did it, it will definitely work. Suddenly, Kun begins to try to say something, pronouncing only a small part of the beginning of the sentence before doing so. He says it's fantastic that she makes her own medicine, and then suddenly asks her where she sweats most often. The dark-haired man assumes it's where the skin comes into contact with something. But he didn't have time to finish with what. The girl looks at him furiously and asks him to repeat such a stupid proposal. The young man suddenly realizes what he just said and starts making excuses. Karshan forms a portal behind him and teleports the young man somewhere. The redhead begins to beg for a kiss for his action, which the girl herself considered too much. He says that instead of a kiss, you can go on the promised date. And the brunette is surprised that he can promise her something like that. Karshan reminds her that he promised to eat with her in a very nice place. Lillian looks at the person in front of him, bewildered, and finally remembers his words. She thought this would be better than continuing to kiss him. If he stays in the club, then everything will remind her of yesterday. So she definitely needs to cover it with another event. The girl tells her interlocutor that this is not a date at all, but simply a joint meal that means nothing. She, happy that the boy agreed with her words, says that they will leave right now. He enthusiastically announces that he is not ready for this, after which Lee Yon reminds him that this is a normal meal, not a date. The brunette says that he shouldn't be so nervous, because this will not be the last time. The young man seems struck by lightning and looks stunned at the woman opposite him, with a smile on his face. He cheerfully states that it turns out this is not all. The brunette realizes that she has once again let her tongue wag for nothing and chattered too much. The shopping district surrounding the academy is full of expensive shops, which is not surprising since many promising heirs of aristocrats live there. The girl cheerfully calls the young man behind her, inviting him into the building. The restaurant she chose was the most expensive establishment in the area. There was a little confusion before entering, but they still managed to get a table. The boy asks if everything is all right, and if he should pay now, and Lalon asks next time. She asks him not to worry, because Kun is paying for this dinner, since the brunette was going to spend her money. The pink-haired boy smiles upon hearing this, saying that then everything is fine. The girl realizes that they were given a nice table with a beautiful sunset view, after which she also notices that the steak she ate simply melted in her mouth. The young man says that he sees the sky every day at the academy, but now it seems special to him, and this is because today was a special day. Leon first falls silent, and then, smiling, says that this is possible. She reveals that she always wanted to go to this place, and Karshan says that if she had told him that, they could go there at any time. The brunette understands that if she had told him something like that, he would have rented or bought the entire restaurant. The boy assumes that she doesn't care about money, and calmly receives and spends it. He says that his aunt never deprived her of her pocket money, and that when she was a child, she used to collect herbs for the villagers. The girl says that she used to live with her parents in a small village, but they died early, so her aunt took her. She also adds that there is nothing sad about it, because her aunt and uncle are wonderful people. Now she has become the only one who comes and lays flowers on their anniversary. In fact, Karshan initially knew this whole story, even before the brown-haired woman's story. He found out thanks to Jane and the background check, so he had already been informed of everything. But the reason he listened to the girl was because she wanted to tell him the story. At that moment, the pink-haired boy felt for the first time that the information he received was just words. But when he heard this story from Lillian's mouth, the information made sense and penetrated his heart. Lillian loves her aunt, not just because she is caring and supports her, but because when the girl talks about her aunt, her expression becomes very soft. If this conversation had not happened, Karshan would not have learned this about his beloved. It made him want more. He wanted her to have that expression on her face when talking about the boy himself. By helping her aunt, she was able to become who she is now. And the brown-haired girl was very grateful to her relative. The pink-haired boy asks if the girl's aunt is a merchant. Lillian reveals that her aunt was an aristocrat. Her family is rich, so her aunt invests, but does not trade. She understood why the young man asked that question. Because most commoners entering the academy come from wealthy merchant families. The girl had an unusual case, and she didn't think it necessary to go into detail. She is a commoner by origin, but her mother and aunt were daughters of the aristocrat Armory's family. Her mother never became a lady, preferring to focus on studying medicinal herbs instead of her duties. And her aunt, who became the head of the family, was a soulless woman, so she brought her son-in-law to manage the estate with her. Subsequently, her mother fell in love with her father, originally from the Abascan Empire, whom she met while studying medicinal herbs. It was customary for citizens of the Lagrat Empire to inherit their father's surname. But her father had no surname. In the Abascan Empire, most commoners did not have a surname. Lillian doubted that her father had a surname for some reason. And because of this, she became a commoner with noble roots from her mother's side. The brunette thought it was better not to mention the fact that her aunt wanted to adopt her. Karshan looks inquiringly at the pensive girl, and then addresses her by name. She realizes that she is lost in her own thoughts, and then asks what they were talking about before. The boy asks where she got the herbs from, after which Lillian says that she normally got them from books, and that if the name of the herb was not in the book, but she found out she would still look for the herb. Sometimes she would ask her aunt to go on a picnic and, when they went outside the city to another region, she would dig up many plants that could only be found there, and then study them. The redhead assumes it was fun back then, and then says that it is immediately clear that the aunt loved the girl very much. The brown-haired woman was confused by the fact that the conversation constantly revolved around her. But Karshan says he wants to hear it. She begins to say something about the boy's family, trying to ask something in return. An unfamiliar pink-haired girl looks at Karshan, surprised that he is in this place. Suddenly, she approaches their table and exclaims that this is a coincidence, after which she calls the young man Karshan. Li Young cautiously asks the young man if he knows this girl. The boy, smiling, says he doesn't know what kind of person is next to him. The stranger smiles, clearly thinking of something bad. She says it doesn't matter who she is. The only thing that matters is if she suits the pink-haired one, or not, and that no one can be better than her. The brunette is surprised that the girl continues talking to the young man, even though he said he doesn't know her. The boy turns to his beloved, still ignoring the stranger, and asks her if she has finished eating, to which he receives a positive answer. The stranger says she heard rumors about the academy, and when she first heard them, she thought it was strange. But now she saw what was happening, and it seemed the complete opposite to her. The brown-haired woman looks at her inquisitively, still not understanding what we are talking about. The girl smiles, slightly lowering her head, thinking about what was said. Suddenly, she starts laughing out loud, and continuously as if she were crazy. The stranger hits the table hard, leaving a corresponding sound not so quiet behind her. She approaches Lillian and tells her that this is really very interesting. Karshan looks at the girl, very displeased, and this look clearly bodes no good. The stranger, staring fixedly at the brown-haired woman, says that this is very interesting. She covers her mouth with her hand, holding back laughter, revealing that she doesn't know what this hobby is. The pink-haired girl says she heard that Lillian has been digging in the earth since childhood. She also said that you definitely shouldn't enter this restaurant with dirty hands. The brown-haired woman barely reacts. She only replies with some denial. She says she is studying pharmacology, so she touches the ground at least once a week. The unknown girl looks bewildered at the one she wanted to laugh at. Suddenly, she starts getting angry and asks what the girl just said. Karshan starts to laugh slightly at the situation. The pink-haired girl realizes this. She looks at the boy with some fear and even incomprehension. She starts to get furious because Lillian dared to turn her words into a joke in front of Karshan. The young man, turning to the brown-haired woman, suddenly asks her to take his hand. She carefully extends the palm of her hand to him, without understanding for what purpose she must do this. The redhead, tenderly holding his beloved's hand, smiles at her and tells her that this is necessary to escape. They end up high in the air. Thanks to his teleportation, the boy apologizes and says that this is the first place that came to his mind, after which he promises to go down quickly. Testa was not the first time the brown-haired woman had teleported, but she would never have thought that she would ever fly through the air. Her heart beat fast because of the beauty of the landscape. They descend gently to the ground after a rather short time. Lilan asks if it's okay to leave that girl like that, but the young man states that everything is fine. Karshan says that, based on his experience, it's better to deal with her than with that stranger. Suddenly, the girl realizes that they forgot to pay, and the boy declares that this place belongs to his family. She is very surprised, and he adds that he didn't say it because he was afraid she would make it difficult for him. The brown-haired girl suddenly realized why they came without an appointment and got the best seat by the window. She was glad they hadn't ended up committing a crime. She abruptly demands that the young man come for dessert, this time at his expense. The dangerous one smiles and agrees to his lover's proposal. They go to another place, and the girl asks him to choose what he likes, after which he jokingly asks her if there is a separate stomach for dessert. Lijun says she wanted to come to this place. Jane told her once. As she walks forward, the boy abruptly turns around and looks back with a frown. He addresses her by name, clearly wanting to warn her about something. Carson says he is going to the bathroom, and then asks her to take a seat. The brown-haired woman asks him to come back, and tells him that she will take a seat at his request. She is sitting near the door, facing the small window on which her gaze was fixed. While she is not looking, someone cautiously starts approaching her from behind. It was the pink-haired boy, reporting that on the way he had already stopped by to pick up her order. The girl abruptly asks why this happened, even though he says he doesn't know that girl. And the boy says there is more than one, or two people who know him. But he doesn't. The air of a good-looking duke, and endless rumors that follow him. So he has known such people all his life. The brown-haired woman asks her interlocutor if he likes the cake, and receives an affirmative answer. She says that eating something tasty always lifts everyone's spirits, so she suggests they eat before returning to the dormitory. For Lillian, the academy was a kind of refuge, and she thought that perhaps it was for the young man too. In a life full of hundreds of stares from strangers, you need a place where you can become a teenager for a while. Therefore, she hoped that this time would be very fun. The girl notices a pink kitten that unsettlingly reminds her of Karshan. Together they approach this pink clump, only if the brown-haired woman looks at the animal. Then the boy's gaze is fixed on her radiant smile. Lee Jian says she was interrupted in the middle of dinner, but that it was a pretty good evening, and then asks the pink-haired boy's opinion. He reports that he cannot even think of such a thing, because tonight was very fun. The boy remembers the moment he asked his beloved to take a seat. Then he said he would go to the bathroom and, having received approval, he went somewhere. That stranger sees the boy and realizes that he will finally go where she needs to go. She runs towards him and shouts that Carson noticed her burning gaze and finally decided to approach. The girl is happy that, as it seemed to her, He abandoned that dog and decided to come with her. The redhead repeats that he does not know the person in front of him, after which he asks her why she keeps following him. Suddenly, she understands something and says that she is 1 year older than him, and that a situation happened a year ago. The stranger says that he took a leave of absence to be closer to the boy, after which he says that now they can see each other next year. He adds that if he recognizes her and her worth, he will definitely accept her. Karshan suddenly calms down and asks her how many people like her he thinks he has seen, after which he declares that he has no interest in her. The girl abruptly starts saying that Lillian deceived him and came to him for position and wealth. Suddenly, the young man asks if the brown-haired woman used him. The stranger exclaims that her assumptions are correct and that she is a gray mouse digging in the dirt, which is very ridiculous. The pink-haired man suddenly bursts out laughing, clearly directed at the girl's words. Feeling scared, she bewilderingly asks him why he started laughing. Karshan leans over and is about to say something, catching his breath before doing so. The young man abruptly states that he would like Lillian to use his position so that she needs him for profit, and to make the most of it. The unknown girl looks at him dumbfounded, not understanding what he is talking about. The boy adds that, unfortunately, the brown-haired woman is not one of those people, and that makes her even more attractive. Abruptly, he slightly changes the subject and threateningly looks at the woman opposite, after which he threateningly asks her why she allows herself to say such things about his beloved. The girl looks at him scared, after which she makes her pathetic attempt to convince him of her words again. Karshan looks seriously for a moment, remembering this moment that happened during his dinner with the brown-haired girl. He tells the brown-haired girl that today was fun and thanks her. Lillian invites him to finally return to the academy. He agrees, after which he thinks about the fact that she shouldn't know this story with the stranger. Several weeks have passed since the girl's date with Karshan. The aristocratic uncle keeps consulting about his soulmate and apparently this is something special for him. The pink-haired boy is calm, and Kun continues his treatment. The only one who really worries the girl lately is Hans. The boy decides he has a chance, because if you recognize him, he will no longer be a stranger. He also kept approaching different people and simply sighing. The girl asks him what he is doing, and the young man is surprised, pretending that she noticed how bad he is, after which he says that everything is fine. Hans says that working with his father has become a bit difficult. Moreover, this year is a hot summer, and he prepared many summer products. But this time, the competitors launched an excellent new product, which made all their efforts in vain. The brown-haired woman reports that this skin cooling cream will only provide slight relief and will not do anything special. And if she applies it constantly, it will not benefit the skin. The boy is surprised by what he heard and said that they are buying it like hotcakes. But the girl only says that this is the essence of trendy things. She says that anyway, this is the saddest news so far. And since the situation remains bad, he has to risk his summer business. Lee Jian thought that if he developed a seasonal product, it would solve the problem of independent financing. Meanwhile, two boys talk about one having sweat spots and the other having a complete flood. One of them says they must dry off and go out in the sun. Suddenly, the brown-haired woman asks Hans to sell her the medicine he prepared for her. He replies saying that he won't be able to do much in terms of promotion or investment because, as he said, things are bad, but the girl says she doesn't care. She reveals that she will accept a small commission and then says that she has an idea. The brown-haired woman was disappointed not to have thought of selling this medicine earlier. But before that, she didn't have a reliable distribution channel. And now maybe this is her chance. She keeps thinking about it. But suddenly, someone turns to her. It was Amila, who is now clearly trying to sort out her thoughts. The girl looks at the ground and tries to find the right words. Leon looks at her surprised, waiting for at least some words from the person in front of her. The brown-haired woman remembers developing a rash after using Varminirin. She hoped the redhead used that medicine exactly as she said. The girl abruptly says she is glad everything is fine on her face. The talking potato nervously bites her lip. Feeling shame or embarrassment, she loudly shouts words of gratitude to her savior. The people behind are very surprised by their friend's behavior. Lillian says that paying with food is not necessary. A smile will be enough. Suddenly, Amila says she has become a fan of the girl today. Hans asks what happened, because before there were disagreements between them. But the brown-haired woman says it doesn't matter. After classes during club time, the girl decides that she needs to prepare. Kun is surprised that instead of money, she asks for help with the remedy she gave him. He says he wants to sell that medicine for hyperhidrosis, and that he needs hands that carefully handle herbs. The dark-haired man says that his hyperhidrosis has begun to improve, and this is the best thing that has happened to him in life. And it means too much to him to refuse to pay what he deserves. The brown-haired girl explains that she is still a student, even if she suddenly has a lot of money. And her wallet has never held this much money in her wallet. So it's not good. She adds that she needs to learn to earn money little by little. And for that she needs help. Kun replies that the girl is not one to be convinced by words. So he will be happy to help her, especially with herbs. He reports that he learned a lot from his elf mother. Lijan is surprised that his mother is an elf, and the boy shares that he is a half-elf. The young man says that he doesn't look much like his father, but he inherited his talent as an elementalist from him. And he also learns quickly when it comes to nature. The brown-haired girl realized that the reason he got so angry when she tried to pick the flower was because elves love nature. She is happy to have heard one of the secrets of the House of Vascantis, after which the boy disappoints her by telling her that it is not a secret. Suddenly, Karshan appears out of nowhere, standing very close to the girl. He says he wants to help too, because if Kun can do it, he can do it too. The dark-haired man says that medicinal herbs require subtle touches and gentle ones, and then adds that the boy is unlikely to handle it with his bad temper. The redhead looks threateningly at the young man, after which he says that it is none of his business what his touch is. Lijan abruptly intervenes in this conversation and asks them to step 3 paces away from each other. She says that the more hands, the better. So if he is going to help, let him act, and adds that I will give him the same. Garshan asks to give him more, but the girl denies it and says she will adjust everything depending on the effectiveness. And the boy promises to give him infinite effectiveness. The boy adds that he wants to be the only one, and the best for her, so he will do everything in his power. He flies away and promises to collect everything essential for the girl. Kun looks at the young man with disgust, clearly thinking of something. The dark-haired man apologizes in advance for going off topic, and then says that he feels he needs to tell it. He starts talking about Carson's relationship with the girl, but she interrupts him and tells him that she already knows everything. The brown-haired girl is surprised that she hasn't heard this before, because the whole school knows it. She asks if everything is okay, because the heaviness of the heart sometimes turns into poison, and the overgrown rose bush is full of thorns. She is lost in her thoughts and leans on the windowsill. Li Young says she trusts that she can handle this, and then asks the young man not to worry. The boy looks at the girl surprised, looking for some words. He says that then he has no doubt that the one who flew away has already fixed everything. Kun says he will be here every rest day starting tomorrow to help the girl, and she replies saying that she will also be here all the time. So the club will become much noisier for a while. They talk casually among themselves without suspecting anything. Fjord, standing behind the door, observes what is happening, clearly did not want to make his presence known. He sadly looks at the ground, clearly thinking of something of his own, and drawing some conclusions from what he heard. The boy is jealous that Kun recognized Lijan's emotions, and immediately left. He wanted to do the same, but he couldn't. Hans shouts that this is great. and then says that the brown-haired girl is an angel. The boy says that the antiperspirant will be a hit this summer. Without believing he has a chance to sell such a valuable product. He says that, as Lilan said, they will target a younger audience. He knew a good merchant in the academy's commercial street. The young man says they will launch a small batch and see how the market reacts, and then organize a serious business. The young man thinks it will be a bit expensive, but the final goal is within his loss range. Moreover, modern buyers prefer scarce goods, so this will not be a problem. After which he admits that he actually doesn't mind raising the price. Even more so not much, unless they inflate the cost too much. Lilan tells him to figure it out himself. And Hans promises to show her an excellent result. He admits that he is not very good with herbs, even though he is an herbalist. Because at first, he wanted to go to business school. But his grades did not allow it. He says he heard that all medicines have to be handmade. He cannot help with their production, but perhaps he can participate in gathering the ingredients. But the brown-haired woman says everything is in order. She understands that Hans would collapse under pressure if he were in her company. Both boys look at each other threateningly, almost starting a war. Karshan realizes that the dark-haired boy just took one of his plants, and then asks him if he wants to win by stealing. Kun says this is not stealing, but a choice based on work efficiency, and then says he can do it faster. So it's natural that he does more. Leon realizes that next time she will have to ask him to look away. The girl was surprised that the boys were so fast and impeccable, but Kun had already worked with plants since he was little. And she showed Carson an example just once. And he has already become a professional. He apologizes to Fjord because thanks to her, the club room is never silent now. The blonde understands that one of them is a bit of an idiot, but he didn't feel like getting between the two. He understands that he will still intervene, because he didn't understand how one can suddenly become a good teacher overnight. The brown-haired woman says that if the blonde is bored, he can help her and clean up the resulting mess. The boy gets scared by something, and the bottle accidentally falls from his hands, and then breaks. Lilan looks at him threateningly, and Fjord nervously apologizes to her. While the boys report that they have already finished, they start asking for another task, discussing who can do it faster. The girl understood that she first had to think about replenishing the herbs the last time she found them, but she doesn't want to search too frequently. After which she decides to delve deeper. Very unexpectedly, a new great idea comes to mind. She asks Karshan and Fjord if they replenish their club points by killing demons, and receives a positive answer. Lijan asks if they have already completed all their semester credits, and the pink-haired man tells her not to worry about that. She says that the next time he goes on an extermination mission, she will go with him. Then she asks for a schedule to be made as soon as possible. The young men look at her surprised, clearly a little unhappy with this proposal. The two shout strongly at her not to do this, because killing demons or blowing them up is not the most pleasant sight. The girl says everything is fine, and that she can kill the monster. She says that spraying anti-demon spray while harvesting herbs is a simple preventive measure. If necessary, she uses poisonous needles. She is quite strong because she is used to traveling alone. Fjord notices that the redhead cannot say anything against Lillian's arguments. He says that their target is not a slime, and that it is a dangerous mission involving only combat students, and that they don't know what to expect. The girl says she understands this. That's why she's going with them, after which she says that, to retrieve what the blonde broke, they will have to venture into the demon's territory. She, without waiting for their consent any longer, says they should plan the next date for the departure. Kun watches this with disgust, standing somewhere nearby. Killing demons seems like a big deal. But after visiting different places to collect herbs, it became more of a picnic than a nightmare. The girl realizes that she hasn't made any poisonous needles for a long time. However, everything turned out quite well. She dips a needle in the liquid to check for toxicity and realizes that it is perfect. Li Jian thinks about taking her usual tools and some emergency supplies. She also thinks of one more thing she can do. The brown-haired woman remembers the times when she and her mother went to buy herbs. Always on this trip, Dad would prepare a sweet sandwich for them and savory with his special sauce. They were memories mixed with the scents and flavors of their forest. Her father never told little Lilian or her mother the recipe for this sauce, no matter how much they asked. He explained it by saying that, when she wants to eat this delicious sandwich, she will have to look for Dad. The girl didn't understand this then. But now, as an adult, she understood everything. In the smallest things, my father wanted to be the one who meant something to my mother. In the morning, before departure, the brown-haired girl prepared many sandwiches because she really wanted to eat. She thought that if she asked, Carson would probably eat it all. Then she thought about the fact that the boy, on the contrary, eats everything happily, even if it contains poison. The girl put a lot of effort into making them. And it's her father's recipe, so they had to taste delicious. She really hoped that under no circumstances would it harm the young man. The brown-haired woman imagined how happy the boy would be to receive this food, after which he would thank her as if it were a great gift. She was sure that the boy would definitely like it, because her father's recipe was unique. So it was unlikely that the sandwiches would be similar to the food he had tasted before. Lyon saw him eating them with pleasure and thought that this performance was too easy. She thought it meant that the pink-haired boy was showing her many of his happy smiles. She hoped the sandwiches tasted as good as she imagined. And maybe so, but her heart started beating faster. The mountain, which the academy students call the Back Mountain, but not in the literal sense. It is located at some distance from the city center and can only be reached on horseback or by carriage. The mountain has a rather unique ecosystem, since the magic of this place is very strong. It is a natural environment with special flora and fauna that cannot be seen outside of it. But this place is also very dangerous for people due to the large number of demons. There are two boundaries that define the mountain from their habitat. And the last time Lijin went alone, she managed to cross the first boundary. But it is not so dangerous if you are prepared. The minor demons that appear there are no different from small animals, and they can be scared away with sprays, bright lights, and loud sounds. The second border is inhabited by medium-level demons and high ones, and to use an analogy with a wild animal, it would be a bear or a pack of lions. The academy keeps this mountain under strict control, and there are even rumors that the teachers are secretly monitoring extermination missions in this area. At least Carson and Fjord will not need protection or surveillance. The first thing the brunette saw when she crossed the second border was a huge monster, and the pink-haired boy killed it with a spell. Fjord says that if the monster freezes, it will not be easy to remove the core. Then he says that when they open it, there will be blood everywhere, and Lyon probably shouldn't see it. The girl asks if the blonde is used to this, and receives an affirmative answer. Blonde reveals that it also took him a while to adapt. But when he stood still, Carson had already killed the creature without even blinking. This was even more shocking. So Fjord started training very hard. The pink-haired boy says he is more surprised by Lyon because she prepared to use the poisonous set on the belt when the monster approaches. Fjord also notices this, after which he realizes that the girl is really used to demons. The brown-haired woman offers simply to retrieve the core, after which she suggests that they need to get it to then report the results to the house, and says that she will take care of the extraction. The blonde says that she doesn't have to do it herself because, even though the monster is frozen, the core is very difficult to find, and even harder to get. The girl says she is unlikely to fight, so she will at least do it, after which she promises that she will quickly find out where the core is. Carson says that if she uses the wrong knife, she can cut herself. She asks if they have any objection to removing the demon's core, since it is not a pleasant sight. Fjord starts to deny this and wants to finish the sentence, but the girl no longer listens to him, preparing to do what she had planned. Demons are not the life that all ordinary people are used to. When an unusually large amount of mana accumulates in one place, it perverts, corrupts, and a creature is born in it. At first glance, it may look like an animal, but it is nothing more than a lump of mana moving to attract even more energy to its core. Lilian says it looks like an animal, so she sometimes sympathizes with them. But there were 3 of them, so they can eliminate it immediately. She takes out the cannonball and asks if it is clean enough. Then she reveals that this is her talent. Fjord says that she looks extremely suspicious, and then asks him to put away the knife and come closer to them. She was surprised how quickly she dissected the monster and took out the core. Carson says he is amazed and that she looked really cool. He offers her his help and asks her to take his hand. The pink-haired one uses multiple spells that most mages can't even dream of. Lillian says that she is not only clean, but she is also in good shape. Carson confirms this and reveals that he added a cleaning spell. The girl notices that the wound from cutting the ham in the morning has disappeared. Fjord starts to say that when they used to do the dirty work, he doesn't say that he can do it, and then asks if she knows how many times he had to get his hands dirty to find the core. The brown-haired woman interrupts their conversation and offers to keep working. After some time, they collect a sufficient amount of pure demon cores. Lillian offers to eat, and Carson supports her in this, saying he is hungry. She asks how they managed to eat anything during the extermination, and the boy replies that he simply doesn't eat much, since a full stomach takes away his strength. In fact, during the house, the boys didn't want to eat together, but they almost starved. The pink-haired boy couldn't leave the girl without lunch this time, so he prepared something. He cast a warming spell on the food especially for her. So all that was left was to clean the table. And the brown-haired woman abruptly announced that she had bought sandwiches in the morning. Hearing this, the young man abruptly hit his magical portable pocket with food. The girl asks him what he just shut, but the boy says it's trash. She reports that everything is written on his face, and then asks him what he took with him. The pink-haired girl was surprised that she was smiling so much for no reason. Lee Yon offers to eat together, since she brought enough sandwiches, but she thought that if she made more, it would be more interesting to choose. They begin to eat using the tablecloth Carson brought as a rug. The young people sit shyly next to each other, holding the brown-haired girl's food in their hands. She was a little scared by the way the 2 of them acted, but still, she suggested they start eating. Fjord was a little worried, since the girls prepared them themselves, and there could be poison in there. Both fall silent, and the blonde looks uncertainly at what his companion is doing at that moment. They quickly take a bite of their sandwiches at the same time. Lillian was stressed by the boy's behavior, and it also made her very nervous. The blonde man chews slowly and carefully the bitten piece, unexpectedly says that it is simply amazing, since it was unfamiliar to him. But it tastes so spicy and rich. The brunette says that she prepared a special sauce that her father taught her. She suddenly asks Carson if he liked the food. Feeling a little nervous, the young man continues eating more confidently and answers her question by saying that it is very tasty. The boys begin to rejoice at how delicious it is, and the pink-haired girl rushes to take all the sandwiches, which makes Fjord nervous. The young man hears familiar voices and approaches them confidently. Kun stops abruptly and realizes that Lilian is nearby. The group chats casually among themselves. The girl convinces the boys to try something else instead of a sandwich. Suddenly, the brown-haired woman notices something very strange nearby. She looks toward the place where, as it seemed to her, something strange was happening, while the other 2 were arguing among themselves. Suddenly, something dark seemed to jump or fly. Lion asks what it was, assuming it was a demon, but Fjord replies that there is protection around, so there shouldn't be any monsters. He asks her if she saw anything, And the girl agrees, after which she says it was a bird. But not really. The creature also looked like a dog. So it was a bird that looked like a dog. Or a bird dog, which seemed incredibly strange to the young man. He decides to check the bushes where all this happened. The brown-haired woman. Without hesitation, she abruptly parts the bushes to see better what is happening. A dissatisfied sitting Kun appears in front of her, staring directly at the girl. Karshan threateningly asks why he is here, and if he was following them. But the black-haired boy says he only went out for a walk. The pink-haired boy asks if he came alone from the academy to this place, and receives an affirmative answer. The prince sharply asks what they themselves are doing here, sitting in the most dangerous habitat of demons beyond the second border. They calmly reply that they are just sitting and eating here in this place. Lysiansky sharply says that there are only dishes for 3. So there is no place for someone who just arrived. But he says he didn't ask. Lilan offers him a sandwich, but the dark-haired boy says he prefers not to bother them. She replies that he will not interfere, and that he doesn't need to pay because the girl prepared the food herself. The boy unexpectedly says he will eat, but Karshan reminds him of what he turned out to be, to which he replies that he retracts his words. The brown-haired woman says there are plenty of sandwiches so they can share, and then asks them not to fight and be kind. She wants to say something else, while the pink-haired boy forces the boy to take the smallest portion. Suddenly, the girl hears a strange whisper again. And unknown. When Kun jumped, the animal instantly flew off Lijin's head. But now she sees something small again. In black. Karshan abruptly stops her and tells her not to approach, because there is something there. Fjord says that if she managed to cross the border, then this is not a common creature. And it is dangerous there, so they should go for reconnaissance. And the girl should stay here. But she, without listening to the rest, already runs away. Meanwhile, she had already approached the tender spot and had parted the bushes. What she saw was an adorable winged puppy. She was not mistaken, and it was indeed a puppy, although not a bird. The 3 boys are looking at the cute Lilan, while the pink-haired one is silently jealous of the puppy. Kun says that sometimes beast-like creatures are born without the desire to destroy. But Fjord points out that other demons quickly kill such creatures. The dark-haired boy tells the girl that they are beyond the second border, so she must be careful. He says they shouldn't come here unprepared, and that the club records can only be completed by the 2 of them. The boy supposes that it was Karshan who took her with him, since he is obsessed with her. But the brown-haired woman asks him to calm down. She says that it was she who insisted on coming. The young man sadly says that she has a surprising childish side. Fjord says he doesn't question her decision, but that he cares, so next time they should find another way. But Lion is surprised to have been able to convince them before, but now they say the opposite. The boy says that in the first place, they didn't want to take her with them. And although they are good enough, things can always go wrong. The girl, a little perplexed, tells them that this is not fair at all. Carson reveals that poisonous needles are melee weapons and, if you get too close, she can be attacked in an instant. She suddenly realizes that he is right, so she confirms his words. The brunette decides to show him her needle to try to convince him that it is safe. She says that the needle does not contain any rare poison, but deadly. The boy gets scared, and she understands that at this moment he is too worried. She asks how long they think the product will take to take effect, and the blonde suggests that it takes a minute. Li Yong reports that it takes less than a second. And once the poison enters the body, it paralyses the entire body, and this remedy destroys the creature's mana. So the bigger and more powerful the monster, the stronger the effect. And the girl can kill any opponent in 10 minutes. The blonde is surprised by what he heard, after which he asks why not put something like this up for sale if it's great for killing demons. The girl says that if you handle the poison incorrectly, you definitely won't be safe because the solution is not so easy to eliminate, and it can spread all over the house. The pink-haired girl understands that she herself is also in danger. But Lilan refutes it, saying that she has resistance. She says that for a long time, she gradually developed immunity to this poison. The brown-haired woman states that not everyone is capable of doing this. Because production takes time and precise dosing, suddenly she realizes that. Despite her history, Karshan is still nervous. Kun sharply says he believes the girl, since she changed him like no one else. And if she made the remedy, then he has confidence in it. Lijun thanks him and says it's good that at least someone doesn't doubt her. These words frighten the other two boys and make them feel some shame. Karshan says it's not that he doesn't believe it. He simply doesn't know enough about poisons to be sure of their safety. The girl invites him to see if it is stable or not and to prick the tip of his finger to know the answer. She says she developed immunity a long time ago and that she doesn't have an antidote with her, and then aims to inject herself. The redhead sharply sticks his hand under the needle to protect his beloved. Lijun doesn't quite understand at first, so she just stares at the offered hand for a couple of seconds. Suddenly, she notices blood on his hand and realizes the danger of the situation. The boy calmly asks if the girl was accidentally injured. He slowly, gently, and carefully takes her hand with both palms. The young man leans on her and is glad that she is fine. Losing consciousness, the brown-haired woman runs very fast somewhere, shouting that the guy is a fool. She told him that everything was fine, but the boy didn't believe her. Before this, while the girl was shouting at Karshan and begging him to wake up, Fjord asked her where her medicine was, and she went to get it. The brown-haired girl ran incredibly fast through the bushes and trees despite the obstacles. She asked if Kun could move people using air. And yes, he could, but only one. Lijun fell to the ground with great force, without paying attention to what was under her feet. Previously, she had sent the dark-haired boy to the academy doctor, even if he was alone, promising to get there somehow and take the medicine. She, despite her exhausted strength, confidently gets up from the ground. The girl knew how much Karshan cared about her, but still committed such a reckless act. Her legs begin to give way, and she is already preparing for another fall. Suddenly, she is grabbed by the hand of a man who appears out of nowhere. Fior quickly grabs the brown-haired woman and asks her to calm down a bit. He says they will reach the road together, after which they will get on the carriage they arrived in, and that he will be able to help her. The girl thanks him and realizes that now is not the time to reproach each other. They had to go back and figure out the sequence of actions to create antidotes, and they couldn't waste a second. The blonde suddenly pulls out a knife and cuts the rope holding the horse. She tells the man she will lend him the horse, while he and Lilian leave on it. The brown-haired woman really hoped that Karshan would be safe. The blonde man just looked at the girl in silence, very excited. The pink-haired girl lies quietly in the small and cozy first aid post of the academy, suddenly regains consciousness and slightly opens her eyes. The young man suddenly realizes that he is still alive and examines the palm on which she pricked him with the needle. He only remembered the moment after injecting himself. He remembered how his body instantly froze and recognized that Lillian's needle was indeed very effective. The young man thought of her, wondering if she had brought him to the academy, and also if she was worried about him. He didn't want her to cry, but he would be happy if she did because she was worried about him. Suddenly, someone pronounces the patient's name upon seeing that he has regained consciousness. The pink-haired man notices Lilian, after which he is surprised that she saw through him. The brown-haired woman looks very surprised at the man lying in front of her. He asks her name inquisitively, noticing in her eyes that she was crying. Suddenly, the boy notices something else that seems very scary to him and exciting. There were bloody abrasions and long, superficial scratches on the girl's face. All her knees were badly torn, and even a thread of blood emanated from one of the wounds. He unexpectedly asks her how she could have hurt herself like this, and then asks her to come and heal him. The girl purses her lips and holding back tears. And herself looks at him. She suddenly starts asking how. After all that happened, he doesn't notice her wounds. And also nervously asks her if he only cares about his pain. She nervously shouts at the pink-haired boy that he is a complete fool. The brown-haired woman asks him why he only thinks of her. After which she also asks him if he knows how scared she was when he fell. She says that she could have actually died if the antidote had been prepared later. The girl suddenly realizes that the boy is not to blame. And she can't help but be grateful that he is alive. She was afraid that something had happened to him. But now everything is fine and she is happy about it. She wanted to say many things. But even now, when she knows he is safe, her hands tremble and she feels a tightness in her chest. She no longer wanted to lose those who were once very dear to her. The pink-haired palm touches her tear-stained face very gently. She herself did not understand what she was thinking at such a strange moment. And nervous, Karshan apologizes and says that his body acted on its own because he thought she was in danger. He says he would do the same if he had to go back to that moment. Because he doesn't want her to get hurt. Lilan, gritting her teeth, turns her gaze back to the ground and restrains herself after his words. She sharply shouts at him that he has no right to do this. The girl says that if he is going to do this again, then he should find a safer way. And if he is the best mage in the academy, he should think of something. Without stopping shouting, she says that he is drying her. Or saving her. Whatever it is, let him do it without hurting himself. With the help of magic, after which he asks not to say that he will repeat his act. Karshan promises that he will do the opposite. And he will not allow both of them to get hurt. Then he asks the girl not to cry. But he doesn't have time to finish the sentence. Since she attacks him, she lies on top of him, while he is completely in shock. And also embarrassed. Lijin remembered the way he only spoke to her. The gifts he always brought her. And how he admired her actions. The pink-haired man swallowed slowly. He was very nervous at that moment. His trembling hand reaches the girl's waist. And then gently hugs her. After which he apologizes. And asks her never to do that again. At that moment, the brown-haired girl realizes that everything was predetermined. And she couldn't help but fall in love with Karsian.